Attention, one and all. It is my great honor to make a very important announcement that affects each and every one of you in one way or another. If I'm completely honest, it affects you all in the same exact way, so I would suggest you all listen up, and listen closely. All ears were perked towards the announcer's deep, rich baritone. It didn't matter where they were or what they were doing. It was funny how an announcement brought people out of their own little worlds so sharply. Maybe that was the point. In a few days' time, we will be hosting a formal dinner that you all are invited to. Of course, you cannot choose not to come, unfortunately. However, it isn't like you would want to miss out on such a great experience to celebrate with your fellow friends, enemies, and competitors. Please, before then, make sure you have proper attire. Further details can be found within the letter I, and the rest of those in charge have placed within each and every mailbox here in the Smash Hotel. Thank you for your cooperation, and we look forward to seeing you there. With the announcement finished, the intercom clicked off. The silence that followed allowed those directly affected to stew with the news that had just come to them. Ike, hearing the news, stood up from his spot at the lunch table. Ike, where are you going?" Roy asked, hopping up to his feet to stride beside his friend. "To go and find a good shirt, I guess," Ike shrugged, before referring to his own attire. "Something tells me that this doesn't exactly qualify as formal." "Yeah, I suppose not," Roy hummed. "Smashville, then? If you're going, I'm going. How long do we have to get this all done, anyway?" The two of them exited out of the lunchroom and into the hallway. Some took the news of this event well, while others were not quite as excited. "Why the heck do we gotta dress up for this garbage?" Morton Koopa Jr. asked, disgusted at the prospect. Within his scaly fingers, he held the note that explained the time, the location, and the dress code for the event. It looked totally un-Koopling-like. "Bah, whatever to that," the other exclaimed, his arms crossed firmly over his heavy chest. As a sign of pride, his chest puffed out. His own letter was crumpled up into a ball, and was tossed aside. "I say we totally ditch the whole event, and make our own." "Yeah. With blackjack. And water balloon fights," Lemmy added excitedly. The other Kooplings exploded in cheers. "Don't forget the booming organ music," Ludwig added. "Or the fireworks," Larry giggled. "Or the chocolate fountain that never ends. Imagine all the dipping possibilities," Wendy exclaimed. "What about the spy traps to block other idiots from joining us? This is a Koopling-only party. No one else." Iggy beamed. The rest of the Kooplings twittered happily among themselves, coming up with a scheme to make their party better than any kind of party that these Smash dorks could come up with. All except one, that was. Guys. Bowser Jr. tried to interrupt, but was shut out by the excitement of his adopted siblings. Inhaling deeply, Jr. let out a shrill yell.
"Guys!"
"Ow," Wendy complained. "What's gotten into you, Junior? Normally you're the mastermind behind these stunts." "Yeah. What gives?" Morton backed, crossing his arms. I don't think this is a good idea, he's all," Bowser Jr. explained. "I think Dad would be real disappointed in us if we didn't show. And we might get in trouble with the big guys." "What makes you think that?" Iggy asked, one finger digging out the earwax in his ear. Right on cue, Bowser himself came thumping down the hallway. His arms were full of formal wear. His white wedding attire was held within his big, scaly claws. Atop his head he wore his dapper white top hat, spring-loaded with boxing gloves. And from his neck hung the same tie he had wore when he was humiliated by a different Bowser. Dad?" Roy asked. "What?" Bowser asked his children, stopping where he was. "Why are you little headaches not dressed up yet? Didn't you hear the announcement? We've got a party to attend." It isn't for a few days, Dad," Bowser Jr. told Bowser Sr. Bowser stood silent for a moment or so, before grumbling and cursing to himself. He was so ready for a formal party today. The Koopa King stomped away, leaving his kids to watch and marvel. "See?" Junior addressed. The rest of the Kooplings, begrudgingly, were inclined to agree. "A formal dinner? Why on earth would they think I'd be interested in attending that hullabaloo?" Dr. Wily exclaimed, reading through the letter he and a choice few other assist trophies had gotten. "This is ridiculous. I am an inventor. A man of science. I'm not just a monkey that they can dangle a rope out in front of and expect to impress." "It's a great honor, Wily, and I think you need to quit your bitchin'," Rodan told the other assist trophy. "Newsflash. Not all of us assist trophies got one of these fancy sumbitches. You'd best be on your best behavior. Maybe, if we represent well enough, those hands will actually make an effort to care about this crappy little hotel." "Crappy?" Knuckles asked. reclining in one of the chairs of the main sitting room. "This place is great." "What do you mean, crappy? I've had so many." The chair Knuckles was sitting in shattered to nothing more than splinters, leading him to topple painfully onto the shag carpeting of the floor below. Rodan made a simple gesture. It spoke more words than he could to address the fact that his point had been made. "Phooey. Why do I care about these living conditions? Out of college, I lived in a van. A van. This is a paradise compared to that dumpy old thing." Wiley huffed, remaining adamant. The hairs of his mustache twitched like an upset house cat. "The fact that we have to dress up is utterly ridiculous," Ashley monotoned, "but I'll go. It gets boring around here too fast for my liking. A dinner out would do me just fine." "See? Even the little girl agrees with me. This whole thing is redundant, and shouldn't happen," Wiley said, stomping his foot down. His mind was settled. He was not going. "Oh, don't be such a stick in the mud," Phosphor exclaimed, floating alongside the others. "Think of it this way, old-timer. Chef Kawasaki got a letter of his own. You get a night where the food is actually passable as food, and all you have to do is put on a fancy hat and suspenders." Chef Kawasaki waved happily with a letter of his own in his hand. Before realizing his cooking had just been insulted. "Hey! What do you mean? The curry you made last night literally made my mouth shoot out hot flames," Rodan deadpanned, giving the chef a steely glare from behind his sunglasses. "And there'll be free boo-oo-oo-oo-oos," Phosphorus sing-songed, to further her point. "I know you like that idea." Dr. Wiley paused for a moment. "Fine, I'll go," he finally said, much to everyone's delight. "Though. I'm still going to bring my toolbox. Who knows what kind of improvements the hotel could use." Knuckles let out a groan from the spot he had been laying at, surrounded by splinters of wood from what had used to be a chair. "Sonic won't like your improvements," Knuckles muttered. Shovel Knight strode into the room. No one could see his face, but given his exterior disposition, it was clear he was quite happy. "Good morrow, fellow trophies. Are you, as well, excited for the dinner we are to be having at the Smash Hotel later in the week?" "Oh, of course." Phosphor beamed. "I already have, like, a ton of outfits picked out. Those smashers are going to be thunderstruck when they see what I've got cooking." "Good one," Rodan commented on the pun. "Excellent," Shovel Knight exclaimed. "Although, I do have one question that still ails me." "Shoot, big guy." Chef Kawasaki exclaimed, "What does formal attire equate to?" The day was growing ever nearer. And those who were not the greatest at planning ahead were currently plugging up the lines in Smashville. 4 Toon Links stood huddled around a tailor's shop, waiting for the shrewd old Nit to painstakingly measure out the measurements of each of them respectively. "We really should have done this earlier," Vio told the others, impatiently standing. His foot was tapping against the ground dissatisfied. Really, these other boys had no idea what was going on half the time. "Does he really need to measure all of us? We're literally the same person," Blue exclaimed, voice pained with strain. The old Nit was all but strangling him with the measuring tape. "I assure you, we're all different," Vio corrected, dismayed. "Stop with that emotional bullcrap, Vio. I meant measurements," Blue managed to get out. His face was straining, as the Link was forced to straighten his back up for better measurements. Did we have to get suits custom made for us?" Toon Link asked, tilting his head to the side. "Couldn't we just, like, rent them, or something? How would we get matching colors?" Red asked, as if he had been personally insulted. This was important. "The chances of getting 4 suits that are both our respective colors and sizes is slim to none, Green," Vio told the other, giving him a sassy gaze. "Style above all else, remember?" Toon Link sighed. Maybe picking up that 4 sword was a mistake after all. "Hey," Blue shouted through his thoughts. "We can still hear your thoughts. That was just rude." Sorry, I didn't mean it like that," Toon Link exclaimed, taken aback. Picking up the 4 sword was the best decision he had made in his entire life. Across the way, 2 other men were inspecting their choices for footwear. With their attire picked out, all that was left for Ken and Rit to do was to figure out what they were to wear on their feet. "How about those?" Ken suggested, pointing towards a picture of snazzy dress shoes. "Those'll go good with your dress shirt and vest." "No," Rit responded simply. "If it were up to me, I would not wear the shirt. What makes you think I am going to wear shoes?" "Rit, please," Ken sighed deeply. "We've been here for, like, 4 hours. Pick a pair of shoes and get on with it." "No," Rit repeated. "Barefoot is the way of warriors." "Yeah, I heard you the first 10 times. What about those?" Ken asked, pointing at another pair. "No," Rit responded simply. Ken sighed deeply. In another store, Popo and Nano came to the register with full arms. Tossing their garments onto the register, both siblings looked up at the Mill behind the counter with hopeful eyes. The Mill looked to the black parkas before him, before his eyes returned to the children. Are these supposed to be formal, like everyone else? Yep. Popo happily replied, These are winter parkas, the Mill confirmed. Yep. Nana exclaimed joyfully. These aren't formal, the cashier informed them. I think you missed our formal section. It's in the back. No, we saw it. Nana told him. But we chose to ignore it. Suits and dresses are for losers. Popo told him. The male Eskimo pointed at two boaties, one red and one pink, that accompanied the parkas. We'll make it formal. That isn't. The Mill sighed. It was pointless to argue. Would you like paper or plastic with that purchase today? Paper. Both ice climbers exclaimed. The day was upon them faster than any of them had anticipated. Leading up to the event, the days themselves seemed to sail by, and the next thing the Smashers knew, they were staring at the belly of the beast. And the men's changing room was in absolute chaos. Donkey Kong had managed to clean himself up rather well. Being that the Great Ape already wore a snazzy red tie most of the time meant that dressing up didn't take too much. A sleek black suit coat was draped over his arms, and he'd somehow come across a pair of pants to match. The king of the jungle was coming along just fine, as he ran his big hands through the fur of his head. His little buddy, Diddy Kong, however, was not as much. Letting out a frustrated howl, the chimp was a hot mess. A pair of dress pants was over his head, as he vainly struggled to try and put them on. For some reason, he couldn't find the head hole. The little monkey screamed again, before running around in circles. Naturally, Donkey Kong rushed to the aid of his friend, nearly knocking over Falco in the process. Hey! Watch where you're going, you damn dirty ape! Falco exclaimed, shaking a fist at the other. The bow tie he had been fashioning had come undone due to the sudden interruption. Geez, I tell ya, ain't no common decency round here. You know, Falco, I never took you as a bow tie kind of guy, Fox commented, fixing up his own red bow tie. I always took you as more of a loose, barely tied straight tie kinda guy. Yeah? And I never took you for one to care so much about others' appearance, James Bond, Falco shot back. The ace pilot wasn't wrong. In Fox's current get-up, he looked like some kind of undercover spy. While Falco looked like someone's drunk uncle forced to slap himself into a suit for a formal event. To be fair, that's practically what he was. Yowch, someone's a little touchy, Fox commented. And he also doesn't seem to know how to tie a bow tie. I know how to tie a bow tie, Falco retorted, struggling. It had been a while since he'd been forced to dress up for anything. His gray, too long to close properly suit coat hung wide open, revealing his cream-colored dress shirt beneath. Dressing up is for losers who want to impress a date, and nerds who are getting ready for their stupid nerd trivia games. I ain't either of those things, McLeod. I know. Believe me, I know. You're the guy who tries to look good casually but can't quite pull it off, Fox taunted, idly. He fixed the collar of his own black suit coat, before bringing out a pair of black sunglasses. Really, it completed the whole secret agent look he was going for. Don't forget to tie your shoes, either, Lombardi. Wouldn't want you tripping on them. I'll go get us a good seat. Up yours too, bud, Falco shot back, giving Fox an obscene gesture. Man, the nerve. Falco went back to trying, and failing, to fix his lump of cloth into a bow tie. As Fox walked out, he passed by a slew of other smashers. Thomas the villager, half asleep, had somehow managed to find himself a robe to wear. When scolded by Craig, the purple villager, for not being dressed up enough, Thomas threw on a bow tie of his own to complete the look. The two styles clashed hard. But there was no convincing Thomas otherwise. He was, after all, back asleep on his Wooloo again. Luckily, the she Pokemon was dressed to the nines. At least one of them would look good out there. Walking on, Fox passed by Lucario and Greninja, who both offered the Star Fox Commander a wave. Lucario was decked out to the teeth, wearing what his very own Sir Aaron would have worn. A feathered blue hat was complemented by a blue suit jacket, dress pants, and a long, flowing cape. The aura was flowing through him, as memories of his old master overtook him. Perhaps a formal dinner wasn't such a bad idea, after all. Greninja let out a croak. Beside the dressed to impress Lucario, the Ninja Frog was quite the opposite. While Lucario had gone all out for this event, Greninja had not. Atop his head, he wore a tall, black top hat. In one of his webbed hands, he held a cane. At any given moment, he looked like he could burst out singing a ragtime classic. But at the current moment, he sat doing absolutely nothing. There was no way anyone could make any money off of him. It was agonizing. Fox continued on, but before he left, he tossed a sideways glaze to Captain Falcon, Shulk, Rob, and Mega Man. Falcon? If you don't mind me asking, what the bloody hell are you doing? Shulk asked, bemused. The blonde boy was practically ready to roll, with his navy blue jacket. The pink tie he wore with it gave his whole outfit more flair, and made it his own style. Oh. Hey Falcon grinned, holding up a paintbrush, and waving it dangerously close to the other male. Captain Falcon, surprisingly, was able to make himself look somewhat professional. He was used to appearing at formal dinners and balls in his old line of work, which just so happened to be headhunting. His signature helmet was still atop his head. I'm just giving Rob and Mega Man a few touches here and there. Rob's Falconization had been completely painted over. In its place was a black and white, photorealistic suit. It was impressive what Captain Falcon could do when his mind was set to it. And making Rob as fancy as could be was high on that priority list. The robotic operating buddy let out a myriad of happy boops and blues, signifying his own satisfaction with the work that had been done to him. I see. I'm impressed, Falcon, Shulk complimented. His eyes turned to Rock, who seemed to be wearing a child-sized tuxedo. His helmet had disappeared, and his robotic hair was slicked back and combed up fancily. Shulk hooked a finger towards the little fighting robot. Did you do his suit, too? Nope, he bought it all by himself, Falcon confirmed. I just helped him get it on, and painted over the parts that we ripped holes in. It's a pretty smart and efficient way to do things. Mega Man commented, happy with the way that he looked. It always helps to get out of the blue and into another shade of blue. The child-sized tuxedo was a snug fit, but at least he wouldn't have to worry about his pants falling down. Yeah, until you've gotta return it, Shulk commented. He leaned against his Monado. Even if this was a fancy event, the wielder needed to be ready for anything. Return? I didn't know we had to return these. Mega Man muttered. PSSHH, it'll be fine. Captain Falcon assured. He turned toward Shulk again, whipping a lob of paint off his brush. It nearly landed on Shulk, but, in true Shulk fashion, he saw it coming. Hey, careful where you're swinging that thing, Shulk commanded, sidestepping the lob. Look at yourself. You're covered in paint. It was true. Douglas was absolutely dripping in the substance. Black, white, and blue paint dotted his gray and white suit, making him look like a regular inkling painting. Oop, look at that. Oh well, doesn't matter. At least these two look good. Hey, we'd best be going, right? There's only, like, a handful of hours left until the show's underway, right? Falcon stood, planting a, thankfully, paint-free, hand on Shulk's shoulder. Shulk shook it off, before turning towards the door. Yeah. I guess we best. But please. Don't drip any of that stuff on me. Rob booped and beeped behind them, following along happily. Mega Man followed, ending the train of artsy smashers. Falcon was right, after all. Only a few hours remained. Chaos seemed to be everywhere, including inside of the music room itself, where the event was to be held. No, the tables don't go on the stage. Mark shouted, massaging at his temple. We had a system, people. A system. Tables and chairs are down on the floor, mix and projectors are on the stage. Mark and Ren watched as the chaos unfolded before them. Hotel workers were doing their absolute best to set the stage for the formal dinner. But we're about as good at it as a blind man directing traffic. Are you sure you don't need me to help them? Ren asked, his head turned slightly to face the other man. Joker was a man of many talents. And dressing up was one of them. Red gloves were concealed slightly under a jet black tuxedo coat. His hair still remained a mess, as no comb on planet Earth could rake through that mess of a mop, and his tie was a bit off kilter, but other than that, he looked just as suave as a thief could possibly be. Mark held up a hand. No. You're a guest to this thing, so I don't want to trouble you in the details that go behind setting it up. Remember, you're a fighter first, and a lackey second. Ren nodded his head lightly at that. He supposed it did have some merit behind it. I'm not getting paid to be here, either, am I? Mark, noticing his tie was off-center, moved to fix it. Taking it, he jerked it gently towards the middle of the teenager's dress shirt, and smoothed it out. No, unfortunately. You were just here to good gods. What is that thing? Ren's eyes quickly turned to see Morgana standing ominously in the door frame. The cat had managed to sneak his way in here, intent on showing Joker his outfit for the event. Obviously, Mark was less than impressed. Rude, Morgana huffed, hopping his way towards Ren. Joker. Joker. Look what I found. Do I remind you of anyone, Igor? Joker groaned lightly, rubbing his forehead. Morgana, take those stupid eyes off of your face. And the nose while you're at it. Well, Igor's, like, the snazziest guy I know. Mona complained. The tiny suit he wore was, in fact, formal. But the extra eyes and fake, elongated nose were not. Please, do what he says, Mark suggested. That's terrifying. Morgana huffed, fine. Everybody's a critic nowadays. A loud bang was heard behind the three of them, and a pained cry. Mark let out a sigh. Meeting the deadline might be a bit of a time crunch. How do I look? Female Robin asked her male counterpart, doing a small spin. The flowing white dress she wore was accented by hints of purple ribboning that tied around her waist. Of course, it wouldn't be Robin if she wasn't wearing her cloak alongside it. The robe and dress combo seemed to work pretty well, giving the tactician her own little flair of style. Her hair, for once, was let down. It was quite the contrast to the pigtails she usually wore, but fit the formal requirement rather nicely. With your eyes, male Robin returned, without missing a beat. His own long, dark suit coat gave off the illusion of a cape without actually having to drag one along with him. Tall boots were met with white dress pants, and the whole look was topped off by a pair of formal shoulder pads, a high collar, and sleeves that would fit a small elephant. Fumbling around with a tie, Robin didn't have time to critique the other. You know what I meant. Female Robin exclaimed. I don't know why you're taking this whole thing as seriously as you are, male Robin told her. It's just one dinner we're forced to be a part of, and fancy attire never really suited either of our fancies. I don't know. I just thought it was a fun change of pace, she shrugged. Besides, we want to give a good impression, don't we? The Hero King is going to be there. Male Robin paused for a moment. She did have a point, after all. Hero King Marth would be there, and he didn't want to disappoint the one that was whispered of in legends. You're right. I apologize if I came off bluntly. It's just, I can't get this stupid tie to tie. All you had to do was ask, dummy, his counterpart teased, coming to help him out. With a few quick motions, male Robin was suddenly much more presentable. The tie was perfectly tied, and right down his center. Well. Thank you, one Robin mused to the other. For the first time, he turned to see what his fellow tactician was wearing. Giving her a once-over, a finger went to his chin, thinking. I say you're looking more presentable than usual, which is a good thing. Though, if you're worried about making a good impression, do you need to wear that cloak? Of course I do. She returned, aghast. Would it be us if I didn't? Again, male Robin paused. Before moving to pick up his own robe. I suppose not. I'll take it with, then. Female Robin beamed. I knew you'd come to your senses. A similar scenario was playing out down the hallway, but seemingly in reverse. This whole formal dinner business is a load of hot dragon droppings, female Karin huffed angrily, struggling to get herself into her dress. She and male Karin had decided to represent both of their families by wearing their royal attire for formal ceremonies. Male Karin was representing Hoshido, while female Karin took on the Black of Nor. And she was having the toughest time. Her arms couldn't reach the spot on her back that would effectively trap her inside the formal get-up. Here, let me help, male Karin insisted, zipping her in. I, for one, think that it'll be a great change of pace. Fighting all the time can get a little tiresome, don't you think? No way. I think it's fun. Female Karin exclaimed. It's way better than all these formalities. I didn't miss them. I didn't, either, if I'm honest, but we need to make a good impression, male Karin reminded her. Not only will our friends be there, but the Hero King will be, too. I hope to give both the kingdoms we call home his blessing. Fair enough, I guess, female Karin murmured, though, it's still pretty boring. You've got that right, male Karin agreed, fixing himself. How on earth did he fix that hair of his? Pac-Man, Mr. Game & Watch, Alf and Elamar were ready to get this party underway. Their timing was impeccable, as they each finished grooming themselves. Alf and Elamar wore matching tuxedos over their space suits, with a little top hat atop each of their heads under their helmets. With a handful of Pikmin they had plucked, each space explorer tied a beautiful black bow tie around their necks. The Pikmin themselves needed to be dressed to impress, and both explorers intended that clause to be met. Pac-Man, too, wore a suit, with his own little twist. With lines and pellets drawn into the dark blue of his jacket and pants, it looked quite similar to the maze that he had first found his footings in. Mr. Game & Watch? He was simply wearing a long, tall, 2D top hat. It wasn't like anyone could see his clothes anyway. If he even wore clothes. However, each fighter present were not currently looking after one another. No, instead their eyes were fixed dead ahead on an oddity that had joined them in the changing room. What the heck is he doing? Pac-Man asked the others, scratching at his noggin. Elmer and Alf hadn't a clue themselves, and Mr. Game & Watch was too busy doing Mr. Game & Watch things to care. The man in question stood 20 feet away, with a peculiar set of items in his hands. Link counted what he was holding again. An old rope, a chunk of cardboard, some leftover charcoal, 3 paper clips and a baked apple. Going over the plan again in his head, the hero nodded. Everything here seemed to be just what he needed. Stepping forward, the hero of the wild took to the changing room. The 4 others gathered watched in fascination as Link got behind the changing room door. Arms went flailing and dust went flying. It honestly was a marvel to behold. And they weren't even watching the whole thing go down. Only what was visible above the changing room door. In a few moments, the flailing was done, and Link stepped back out into the changing room. In a full 3-piece suit. Pac-Man, Elmer, and Alf's eyes nearly bulged out of their heads. Their mouths hung agape and open in absolute awe of the event that had just transpired. Mr. Game & Watch even stopped juggling balls long enough to stare in complete awe. As Link walked by, he offered the 4 of them a brief wave, before heading off and away towards the area of the main event. Even after he had left, the others stood and stared at the door. It was Pac-Man who finally broke the silence. Aye. A suit? Pac-Man stuttered, making huge arm motions to show his complete awe. What the heck did I just witness? As if in a daze, Alf and Elmer started following after where the hero of the wild had gone. He was right to leave here, after all. The main event was about to get underway. Young Link fought with his too tight for comfort dress shirt. The young hero wore a green tuxedo with a matching tie. In all honesty, he had chosen the color for the sole reason of keeping his hat with the look and not having it clash too much. It wouldn't be him if he didn't wear the same hat he'd worn since the day he was born, now, would it? Hey, Link. What's wrong? Navi asked, poking out from inside his jacket pocket. Truth be told, she would be completely fine under Link's hat. But the jacket pocket seemed to be too comfortable to pass up right now. It wasn't often the boy wore shirts with pockets. Or pants, for that matter. You're hesitating. You never hesitate. What's the matter? Young Link, characteristically, didn't say anything to Navi's question, and instead chose to stay where he was, watching as the others began to trickle into the music room. Jigglypuff came bouncing along, wearing a stylish bow on her head for her formal attire. Hopefully there was no karaoke at this event. Young Link regretted not bringing along his all-nighters mask just in case. Next up came Rosalina and Lucas. Rosalina hovered slightly off the ground to avoid walking in the heels she had chosen to wear for this event. If she didn't have to walk in them, she wouldn't. And luckily, she didn't have to. Lucas clutched her hand, walking along beside her. The boy honestly did not look half bad in a formal dress shirt and pants. Though, he could use some practice tying a tie. He'd done it all by himself, and Rosalina was too proud of him to say anything. To top off the look, he wore a wreath of beautiful flowers. The same ones he and Daisy had crafted all those days before. Lucas gave young Link a wave, before disappearing behind the big doors of the music room. Oh, I get it. You're waiting for someone, Navi hummed. At this point, she had escaped from Link's pocket, and was floating around the young boy. Who are you waiting for? Lemon and the Inklings? Zelda? The other Links? Who? Soon enough, Navi saw who young Link was staring at. It was a familiar figure. One that the two of them had seen many times before. Though, she did look a little different in a suit. Sheik stealthily strode towards the music room. She had abandoned her old mask in favor of a stylish, feathery masquerade mask. Even now, she couldn't risk letting her identity get out. Her hair was braided in typical Sheik fashion, and flowed down her back and shoulders like a blonde waterfall. She seemed to flinch as she approached young Link and Navi. But, unlike usually, dropped her guard at the sight of her friends. Link. Navi. How nice to see the two of you again, she greeted, a small smile sounding in her voice. I must say, Link, you managed to pull off a suit well. I helped pick it out. Navi tittered happily. Young Link nodded, before extending a hand outward for his friend. Sure, he'd completely forgotten she was here to begin with. But now refused to allow that to happen anymore. This was his way of apologizing. After all, it took her a long time to get the courage to come forth to him to begin with. Sheik, hesitantly, reached out to grab his hand. All right. Enough reminiscing, you two. We've got us a spot to secure. Navi reminded. All the good ones are going to be taken. You never change, do you, Navi? Sheik asked, jokingly, though, I do suppose you are right. And, pushing past the big metal doors, the two of them laid eyes on the fantastic sight before them. The music room was, as if by magic, completely different. Chairs and tables decorated the pristine polished floor of the room. The stage was set, and the sound of soft music tickled everyone in attendance. Mark had met the deadline, and he had met it fantastically. As far as the eye could see, tables were set with a white tablecloth and a commemorative centerpiece dazzled the eye of each attendant. Plates, silverware, and glasses were placed in proper order for everyone's dining pleasure. A projection showed a mural of each and every member of the fighting tournament in action, in one way or another, complete with an auto-scrolling feature. Mark himself sat at a table with his wife and their 2 children. Happily, he and Nora discussed this and that, unaware of the fact that the two of them had eyes upon them from every single corner of the room. No one had met Nora, Carl, or Kevin before, nor had they ever thought to ask Mark about his home life, instead assuming that he lived at the hotel and was plotting everyone's inevitable demise. Cloud and 3 of the heroes sure thought the sight was strange. Did you know that he was married? Luminary asked, giving Cloud a little nudge with his arm. Cloud shook his head no, before returning to staring straight ahead. The former soldier had gone the bare minimum to attend this event. Formal dinners or balls were not his thing. Simply, he wore a white button-up shirt with a black pair of slacks and shoes. Beside him and taking up an additional seat at the table sat his Buster sword. He refused to go anywhere without it, and even gave it its own special bow tie to qualify it for an event like this. The heroes, on the other hand, seemed to go all out. Each of them wore an ascot, cape, captain's coat and top hats of their own respective color. Luminary wore purple, while Roderick wore blue and 8 wore orange. The 3 of them looked as if they could star in a boy band if they had one last member. I never took him as the one for love, Luminary mused, balancing a fork on his forefinger. If anything, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would capitalize on the feeling of love, let alone meet someone and have children with them. What do you know about love? 8 asked, playing with Munchie. The little mouse squeaked happily. What he wasn't happy about was the fact that his super sick mohawk had been combed down and into a more fitting hairstyle. More than you, apparently, Luminary shrugged, taking a swig of sparkling grape juice. In this realm, he was not quite old enough to drink hard alcohol. Aren't you still single? Not all of us can have love thrown into our laps. I'm talking it slow, you know? I, for one, like not being tied down. 8 exclaimed. Munchie gave Luminary the stink eye, before blowing a raspberry his way. Please, gentlemen, can we not kill each other before the entrees are done? Roderick asked. I'm sure if you go and ask the Lord for love advice, he would be more than happy to give it to you, Cloud muttered. The amount of venom he put on the word Lord would be enough to kill a small elephant. 8 and the Luminary stopped their bickering, giving their attention to Cloud. Are you okay? 8 asked. No, Cloud responded simply. Before they could continue, however, they were interrupted by a herd of stampeding Yashas. Each wore a top hat and bow tie of their respective colors, and gathered around a table not too far away from the one Cloud and the 3 heroes were sitting at. All at once, the 8 Yashas started causing a ruckus. Red and dark blue began shooting their tongues into the air to see who could go farthest. Pink yawned, resting its head on the table. Light blue and purple were having a staring contest. Yarn hacked up a hairball and pushed it under the table, much to the disgust of Yellow. Green, however, began nuzzling against one of the others who had been unfortunate enough to share their table space. Okay. I get it, Yoshi. You're happy to see me. Mario laughed, patting the friendly dinosaur on the head. It's so good to see you. My, this table sure is populated, Cappy exclaimed, leaving Mario's head. Being that Mario was in his wedding attire, Cappy didn't have to change his form much to survey the situation. Casually, the Cap turned towards Princess Peach. What do you make of this situation, Peach? Peach let out a sigh. I wish they didn't always choose to sit with us. But they're alright, I suppose. The Yashas stopped what they were doing to look briefly at Princess Peach. That was, of course, until the appetizers made their way to the tables. Excitedly, each Yoshi let out a happy cry, before going to work. Blam. 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 The sound echoed all around the room, as the Yashas dug in. Many heads turned towards them, before returning to what they were doing, or the conversation they were having. Red was one of these heads. After glancing up from his communicator to look at where the sound was coming, his eyes returned to it. Leaf had urged him not to find a seat until she had met up with him, and said that she would be a little late. That was alright, Red was okay with waiting for a little while. He had entered the music room, though, if only to see what people were wearing. He and his own Pokemon were dressed to impress. A slim black suit met a skinny, red, non-centered tie for Red's attire. He still wore his trademark hat on his head and his Versus Seeker on his coat. It wouldn't be him if he didn't, would it? His back fell against the wall, as he let time take its course. Any second, the door would open, and Leaf would come in. He hoped for that, anyway. Charizard, Ivysaur, and Squirtle gave each other glances. They knew what their trainer was waiting for, and couldn't wait for the other Pokemon trainer to arrive. Squirtle tipped his sunglasses down to look at Ivysaur. Using his vines, Ivysaur fixed his own bow tie and hat, before he turned towards Charizard. Charizard gave him a nod, not fiddling with his ascot. It had taken forever to get on, and he wasn't about to ruin it. The door opened, giving Red a new hope. However, that hope was dashed as Chad and Chelsea, the Wii Fit trainers, power walked into the room. The two were wearing pretty standard outfits for a black tie event such as this, but they had added their own little twist to it. On their heads and wrists, both wore sweatbands. They had to be prepared for an intense workout, even at a moment like this. Following the two gym rats came Zelda and Marth. Both looked drop-dead gorgeous, and the whites of both of their outfits dazzled all eyes that gazed upon them, Red's included. Zelda's dress sparkled with the light of a goddess, while Marth looked as if he were ready to walk down the aisle again. That was, of course, because he had dug out the same suit he had worn on his wedding day for this event, and added some dazzling blue flowers to it to top off the look. Both respected individuals waved Red and his Pokemon before going their separate ways. Finally, in the parade of disappointment came Penny, the pink villager, and Petunia, the green villager. The girls walked in, hand in hand, and didn't notice Red. Instead, they bolted ahead to where more of the children of Animal Crossing sat. Oliver, the yellow villager, and Ren, the light green villager, welcomed them with open arms. Red let out a soft sound, before checking his watch. It had officially been a half hour since they were required to be here, and still Leaf was nowhere in sight. His mind got to wondering just what it was that had taken so long for her to get ready. Seeing Leaf in a dress, or any formal attire for that matter, was not something Red thought of regularly, but if his imagination was anything to go off of, she would look stunning. "Waiting for someone?" a voice asked. Red nearly jumped out of his skin, not expecting anyone else to see him. "Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to startle you," Richter said, coming to stand by Red's side. He offered the kid a glass of water, seeing that he, too, had been waiting here for much too long. "Here, have a drink." "Tea, thanks," Red mused, taking the glass from the vampire hunter. Quickly, he drank it down, before returning to his spot against the wall. "To answer your question, yes. I am waiting for someone." "Soar." Ivysaur. Ivysaur confirmed. They had, in fact, been waiting for quite some time. In return, Red patting his Pokemon on the head. "Yeah, me too," but, Richter mused, stretching his arms upwards. His get-up gave of an old-timey charm. The fluffy tie tucked easily behind the blue waistcoat, which ran along with a myriad of brown buckles all the way down his abdomen. Graciously, he took the glass back from the other, before moving to stand by him. "Who's got you burning the midnight oil?" "My friend, Leaf," Red answered the other. Idly, he shuffled his feet, checking his watch again. 32 minutes. "How about you?" "My friend, Lucina," Richter responded. "She told me not to go anywhere until she got here. She also told me to wrangle up her boyfriend, Solo, but I can't find that sucker for the life of me." "Did he go and find a spot? Or is he still getting ready?" Red asked. Richter offered a shrug. "I don't know. I haven't seen him at all today. Say, there are a few stools over." The vampire hunter was cut off by the doors coming open again. In the bright light of the hallway that suddenly flooded into the darker area that was the music room, neither could see if it was the person they were currently waiting on. Charizard stomped once on the ground, and Squirtle teetered happily on the edge of his toes. This had to be it. In came Dr. Mario. "Oh, hey Doc," Red muttered, a bit dejected. "You look good. Say, do you have any idea where Leaf is?" "Please, Red, I put as little effort into this as I could. All I did was take off my jacket and leave the stethoscope back in the clinic," Dr. Mario said, holding a hand out to silence the other. "And a Leaf? What do you think I am? A tracking device? But if I had to guess, she'd be right down the hall, coming down the hall and into the music room right about." Dr. Mario tapped his watch, as Richter, Red, and his Pokemon looked on. Now, the doors once again opened, as three familiar-looking Pokemon burst into the room. Red and Leaf must have had a familiar fashion sense for their Pokemon, because the only thing that changed between them were the color of their attire. Reds chose hotter colors, while Leafs wore softer, cooler colors. The Pokemon were overjoyed to see each other once again. But Red was more focused on the trainer that followed them. "Hey, Red." Leaf greeted, waving a hand to her friend. "Sorry to keep you waiting. But I'm so glad you did." If Red hadn't known any better, he could have sworn the champion Pokemon trainer before him was a princess from another land. The black gown with streaks of green Leaf had on would honestly be right at home in either Peach's or Zelda's wardrobe. But Red was convinced neither of them could pull it off as well as Leaf did here and now. Her hair was pulled up into a braided bun, with a strand of auburn streaming down her face, which she honestly just could not get to stay. A beautiful white and red flower was kept in her hair, as well, completing the whole look. "Wow," was all Red could manage to say. "Cleans up nice, eh?" Dr. Mario teased, giving Red a nudge in the ribs. "I feel really underdressed now," Red commented shyly, a hand moving to massage the back of his head. "Please. This whole thing? I found it at a second-hand shop in Smashville," Leaf mused. There was a grin stretched across the girl's face. She'd never seen Red act so coy before. "I was surprised no one else had found it before I did. And then I was even more surprised when it was my size." "It's wonderful," Red complimented. He'd never seen nor imagined Leaf so dressy before. Did his heart skip that beat? "Please, you two, keep it together. We ought to go find a spot. You two can gawk over the pretty colors later," Dr. Mario told the others. He made a motion for them to follow, before heading to the stairs. "He's right, you know," Richter suddenly said, reminding the others that he was still waiting. "Hey, if you see Solo down there, do you want to send him up here for me?" Red shot Richter a nod, before awkwardly shuffling towards the stairs with Leaf. Their Pokemon followed, as giddy as it came. Leaf let out an embarrassed sort of noise, before speaking up. Hey, Red?" "Yeah?" Red asked, turning to face her. For some reason, he couldn't bring himself to look at her directly. I'm not very good at anything other than tennis shoes," she murmured, rubbing at the backside of her head. Lifting a leg, she revealed to him that she was, in fact, not wearing tennis shoes, and instead wore a short pair of heels. "Do you think you could, help me out?" "Oh. Yeah, of course," Red offered. He brought a hand out for her. Graciously, Leaf accepted his offer. With a genuine smile on her face, Leaf's fingers intertwined with Red's, and the duo headed down the staircase to the main sitting area. The Pokemon shared glances between each other. "Wooloo," Leaf's Wooloo commented, shaking her head. Those two were clueless. Charizard. Red's Charizard spoke. It was a good thing no one had a translator on. "Squirtle." Squirt. Both Squirtles agreed at the same time. "Ivysaur?" Leaf's Ivysaur asked. They really should get moving. Coming to their senses, they all headed down the stairs, leaving Richter alone at the top. Richter checked his watch again. Officially, Lucina was 45 minutes late. The seats were quickly filling up. Richter swished the remaining water around that was in his glass, and returned to waiting patiently. Another 5 minutes passed. Then, another. It felt as if Lucina would never make her appearance. Finally, after what felt like years of waiting, the door opened again to another familiar face. However, it wasn't the one he'd been waiting for. Instead, it was his ancestor, followed in by the one who held his heart. Simon and Bayonetta made their appearance, arm in arm. It took a moment for the duo to realize it was Richter standing there, but once they did, the two greeted the fellow Belmont with gusto. "Richter, my boy. What are you doing here instead of down there with the other guests?" Simon asked, an eyebrow raised. His privateer's coat was ripped at the sleeves, showing off his arms. He wore a tie similar in style to Richter's, yet obviously older. Atop his head he wore a crooked, formal hat, custom of the 17th century. "I'm waiting for someone," Richter answered, before deflecting the question. "What happened to your suit coat?" "I don't like sleeves," Simon answered simply, with a shrug. "Do you have a date coming, darling?" Bayonetta asked from under her over-the-top white hat. The dress she wore was one she often wore when she didn't have to be out killing angels. Yes, it was extra. But would it be Bayonetta if it wasn't? "My one love is dead, Bayonetta," Richter deadpanned. "No, I don't." "You can say that, honey, but the heart always evolves and moves on," she responded, a soft, knowing hum to her voice. "Why else would you be waiting here instead of enjoying the festivities?" Richter gave Bayonetta a look. "What do you know that I don't, witch? Please, you two." Tonight is supposed to be a grand celebration. A joy for all of us. There's no need to fight, Simon interrupted, playing the peacekeeper. Come, Lady Bayonetta. Let's go down and find a seat. I'm sure Richter will be alright without us nosing his business. That'd be grand, Richter told them. I suppose, Bayo hummed. She and Simon continued down the stairs together. One last time, Bayonetta turned towards Richter, shooting him a wave. Farewell, Richter. Hopefully it pans out the way you plan. Richter let out a small huff, moving to sit on a set of stools not too far away. It had officially been 50 minutes. At the 52-minute mark, Solo, dressed to match the other heroes but with green, came to join Richter. Richter gave the green hero a look, before returning to state ahead at the door. Hey, Solo. Hey, Solo responded, taking a seat next to the other. Is she here yet? No, not yet, Richter said. I swear, too much longer and I'm going to die of impatience. This line got a chuckle out of Solo, before a comfortable silence fell over the two of them. The gentle rhythm of the tournament's main theme tickled their ears. 55 minutes. 56 minutes. Richter looked at his communicator again to make sure that she was coming. The text confirmed her intent. She was coming, it was just a question of when. 57 minutes. 58 minutes. Finally, at the 59-minute mark, those big, metal doors opened once again. And an immaculate beauty stepped in afterward. Lucina and Crumb stepped into the soft light of the room. Lucina wore a white dress, embezzled with gold frills. A blue shawl hung loosely from her shoulders, and the crest of the House of Lys sprawled her chest and abdomen. Crumb, too, wore the royal robes of his house. Father and daughter approached, absolutely stunning the two men who had been waiting. Holy cow. Both mused at the same time in the same dazed state. Sorry we took so long. Lucina quickly apologized, departing from Crumb's side. Father couldn't figure out how to work his attire. And nearly ripped those robes in half in the process. Don't pin this all on me. Crumb groaned. It took you a long time to get situated yourself. And you wouldn't let me help you, either. I didn't need it. Lucina exclaimed. Their hour-late arrival, however, said otherwise. You look beautiful, Richter complimented. I mean, I was going for a more ruggedly handsome vibe, but I'll take beautiful, Crumb mused, inspecting his nails. You both look dashing, Lucina complimented Solo and Richter. Now, we're already late. We don't have time to stand here dawdling. Solo? Can you help me down the stairs? Of course, the hero said, coming to her aid in this time of need. The two interlocked fingers, and started off down the stairs. You know, Richter, it'd be nice if you helped this old man down the stairs, too, Crumb requested. With a gentle sigh, Richter did just that. Crumb wrapped an arm around Richter's neck, and the duo went off down the stairs. As they went by, they passed by Sonic's table. The blue hedgehog gave them a wave, one that Richter reciprocated shortly, before returning to the conversation he was having with his friends. He, Shadow, and Knuckles sat at the circle table dressed in suits of their respective colors. Sure, Sonic wasn't the biggest fan of wearing something so constricting, but hey. Looking in the mirror, he thought he pulled it off pretty well. Do you fellas mind if I take this chair? Sonic's eyes rose up to meet Banjo's. The bear was still not wearing a shirt, but he had managed to fit into a pair of dress pants that must have been much too tight for comfort. His backpack had a fancy ribbon tied onto it, too, to make that for the criteria. Sure thing, buddy. Sonic grinned to the bear. Shadow? Knuckles? You both remember Banjo and Kazooie, right? Regrettably, Shadow muttered. Though, he isn't quite as appalling as I remember. You watch that tone, Buster Brown, or I'll have to give you a black eye to match the rest of you. Kazooie shot at the black hedgehog. She popped her head out of Banjo's backpack as the bear sat down. Banjo took his pack off and placed it in a chair next to him, allowing Kazooie to have her own spot. Luckily, it wasn't right next to Shadow. Hey, Kazooie. Long time no see. Knuckles exclaimed. Where have you been hiding out all this time? Dead IP hell, Kazooie deadpanned. Before Knuckles could respond, Kazooie popped back inside of the bag, before pulling out the egg she and Banjo has been so carefully watching. To ensure it met the formal qualification, Kazooie placed a little top hat on top of it, before balancing it perfectly on the table. Sonic, Shadow, and Knuckles stared at it for a few seconds, before their eyes turned to Kazooie. So, Sonic started, twiddling his fingers, looking for the right words to say. Did you lay that? Shadow asked, concerned. Who's the father? Knuckles asked. No, it's not hers. Banjo told the others. She's just watching it for someone else. Yeah, right. I totally scammed some nerds out of this egg because they totally didn't want it, and now I'm going to raise it as my own. Then, we'll take over the world. Just the three of us, I want no part of this, Banjo told her. Kazooie gave her platonic life partner the stink eye. Well, good. Good luck with that? Sonic wished. Don't encourage her, Shadow told the other hedgehog. She'll actually go through with it, bad luck with that, then? Knuckles asked. Maybe I'll have to give you a black eye, Dreadlocks. Kazooie squawked, making a pecking motion at Knuckles. Come here. Come here. As the Sonic table squabbled with one another, two sets of eyes were fixedly staring at them. Or, well, not at them, per se, but rather at what they had. They've been staring dead ahead at that egg for a solid 2 minutes, Snake commented, rubbing at his beard. Something about the way the two idols going deathly silent for once made Snake ponder their motives. Samus let out a small SNRK, before bringing her glass up to her lips. Taking a long sip of wine, the bounty hunter popped her lips off, rolling her eyes. I don't know, secret agent, why don't you tell me? Snake rose an eyebrow at her remark, turning towards her. Snake was no stranger to pulling off tuxedos. To remain truly stealthy, one must be used to wearing just about anything under the sun. However, Samus herself looked a little odd in formal attire. You do know that we're matching, right? Neither of them had planned it. However, when the duo came to take the table they currently resided at, it was impossible not to make the observation Snake had made just then. The two of them had, in fact, wore the same kind of suit and tie combo, right down to the very brand that manufactured it. Again, Samus hit Snake with another eye roll. Whatever you say, Bond. All I'm saying is that you ripped off my look. Pikachu, upon Samus's shoulder, spat a raspberry at Snake. The yellow Pokemon, too, was in a formal suit and tie, and completed the look with a fancy black fedora atop his head. His ears poked out of the hat, and his tail the suit. Pikachu. Hunt barked twice, signaling the three of them to shut themselves up. The dog was tired of hearing the bickering, and just wanted to enjoy the great meal he had before him. Duck flapped her way onto the table, pushing a bowl of soup, an appetizer, towards the hungry dog. Both bird and beast alike wore a red bow tie. Their head decorations were a little different, however. Duck tucked a pink lily under her feathers, while Hunt wore a sharp groom's hat on top of his head. As if starved, the dog began slurping away at the soup, with Duck pecking off little pieces of breadsticks for herself. This alone would be enough for the two of them, but more food was on the way. The two hungry animals were in heaven. Though, the four of them were not the only guests seated at this table. There were, in fact, 9 others that dotted about. A leather jacket isn't formal. Cyan shouted to Lime. He himself had gone all out for this event, wearing only the most expensive of threads in his trademark shade of blue. Lime, you said you were gonna dress up for this. I did, Lime retorted, stabbing a fork through a breadstick. He had no way to eat it, however, because he refused to take off his mask. I am dressed. Formal attire is stupid. Yeah. You tell him. Orange agreed. The spunky inkling herself hardly seemed to care about herself, either. Sure, she was wearing a skirt, but the t-shirt that she usually wore still decorated the upper half of her body. Only nerds get all dressy and caring about their appearance, isn't that right, Lemon? Orange elbowed the yellow inkling, who shot her a glare. Lemon and Pink had both decided that dresses were not what was in right now, and instead opted for formal attire in the form of suits of their respective colors. The look was all that needed to be said, as Lemon returned to what she was doing. Come to think of it, Lemon hadn't seemed to say anything to anyone since they got back from Smash vs 169. Indigo played with his tie. But for the life of him he could not get it to stay straight on him. Letting out a deep, frustrated groan, he tossed his hands back. He had tried. One could give him that. But succeed? He had not. The purple inkling looked as if he had dressed himself in the dark. Here. Let me get that for you, Blue offered. Reaching over the table, and knocking over a few things in the process, he fixed the tie without a second thought. Blue himself was decked out. Much like Cyan, the other blue inkling had gone to great lengths to ensure that he was presentable for this event. Thanks, Indigo muttered. I think I needed that. Definitely. You looked like a complete shrimp head. Violet laughed. I was gonna say something about it earlier, but I decided against it. Rude, Indigo huffed. He tried his best. Pink added. His best sucked. Orange laughed. Look. His collar is still up. You're one to talk, Orange. You aren't even dressed up, Lime shot. Neither are you. Exclaimed Cyan. The table erupted into utter chaos. Duck and Hunt were making a huge mess with their soup. Lemon looked just about ready to punch Orange in the mouth. Cyan and Lime were arguing over the dressiness of a leather jacket. Only 3 Inklings and 2 humans stayed out of the conflict. Kali and Marie abstained because the duo were much too preoccupied with staring at the egg. And Sylve looked like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The puffy, silver dress looked sweet on her. But there was an underlying problem with it that. What if the orderlies came back for her and saw that she was out of her uniform? The idea was just a thought at first. A small voice whispering it to her in the back of her mind. Then, it became louder and louder until it seemed almost inevitable. At every odd movement, she would dart her head towards the door to make sure that they weren't coming for her. A hand made contact with her shoulder, and she almost jumped out of her skin. Fearfully, her eyes darted upward, certain that it was them. But instead, she met the concerned eyes of Solid Snake. Taking out his translator, he placed it on the table, before returning to the young Inkling before her. "What's the matter, Sylve? You look like something's bugging you. Need some more water?" Samus offered the child, before a realization struck her. "Oh, wait. That'd kill you." Pikachu face-palmed. Sylve's lip quivered at Snake's question. She could feel the dam bursting, but she couldn't help herself. Quickly ramming her face into Snake's abdomen to hide the tears, she began explaining what was wrong through choked sobs. Samus, with Pikachu still on her shoulder, quickly rushed to Sylve's side to help, while the rest of the Inklings remained in their own little world. A waiter passed by the sobbing Inkling with a platter of plates housing the main dish of the night upon each disc. When offering to hand them out, Snake ushered the young man away, citing more pressing matters at hand. The waiter did just that, moving to the next table on. Which just so happened to be the most terrifying table of them all. The villain's table. As quickly as he could, the young waiter dished out the dishes, before scampering away. The attendants at the table didn't even have the time to tell him thank you. Though, it wasn't like they would have. They were villains, after all. Most of them, anyway. "Be sure to blow on your food, friends. It's probably very hot," Isabelle exclaimed to the villains gathered. To her right sat Wolf, fixed up and dressed in a suit of her choosing. Surprisingly to no one, Wolf was not exactly the most well-versed in terms of formal wear. To her left sat Vil. Sure, the villager was a little on edge sitting with the villains, but so far, they had been rather polite to the kid. He, too, had his get-up assigned to him by Isabelle. The puppy secretary sure did have a knack for planning. It was almost like it was her job, or something. "Thank you, Isabelle," Gundorf thanked. He did not take her advice, digging straight into the meal that had been served to him. Just as predicted, the King of Evil was burned by the scorching roast that he tried to consume. "Ag, son of a..." Gundorf stopped, recognizing that he was with company. Ridley gave him an evil eye, as Pichu listened intently for Gundorf's words. The look told Gundorf that Ridley would make Ganon's life worse than death if he so much as uttered a single curse word. "Gerudo," Gundorf finished, taking a napkin to wipe at his lip. "Son of a Gerudo." "What a save," Mutwo commented telepathically, levitating his own food to his mouth. With his psychic prowess, Mutwo had already cooled his food enough to eat. And eat he did. It wasn't everyday food this good was easy enough to come by. King K. Rool groaned, opening his mouth slightly. Wolf, carefully, blew on a forkful of meat and potatoes, before bringing the fork to the King Croc's gaping food hole. Half of it, King K. Rool scarfed it down. He was making good progress to recovery, really. Only a week or so more in the full body cast before he would be himself again. Festively, a tie was painted onto the cast by Wolf. As an extra little kid, it was the very same tie Donkey Kong often wore. Isabelle, graciously, took a forkful of food herself and blew on it. Then, leaning over, she gave it to the mayor. Sure, he could easily feed himself. But if Isabelle was offering... Ridley nudged Gundorf. "Look at that. Ain't they just the happiest couple around?" "I'm not one for love, but they do seem it," Gundorf shrugged. "I do suppose this counts as a... date? Is that the term for it?" Isabelle and Wolf exchanged a look between themselves, before nodding in agreement. "I don't think plummeting out of the sky in a weird, dimension-hopping helicopter counts as a date, does it?" Wolf joked, nudging his beloved. Isabelle let out a soft laugh, before shaking her head. "Nope, I don't think it does. This has got to be the first. And we are just honored to have it here," Mutwo sarcastically communicated. A hair from one of the two furry animals across from him fell onto the pristine white of Mutwo's jacket. Annoyed, he flicked it off with the power of his mind. "Though, if you could both stop shedding, that'd be great." The sound of glass shattering was heard at the table, making the villains cringe. Turning heads, those present could see that it was the doing of none other than Wario and Waluigi's bastard children, Warmio and Waluigi I. Hey! How many times do I gotta tell you? Wario exclaimed, his hands going up to his tycooner's hat. The red of his angry face contrasted greatly with the white and purple of his snazzy suit. You don't throw the glass until you're done with it. Yeah. You listen to Uncle Wario, Waluigi I. Waluigi shouted himself. The tails of Waluigi's purple suit coat dangled dangerously close to the shards of glass that were decorating the ground below. His yellow bow tie gave off a different kind of energy that he was. The bow tie shouted sunshine, while Waluigi's face screamed anger. Warmio and Waluigi I looked up at their fathers, before slamming a plate down to the ground, as well. Why, you little! Wario exclaimed. I''M.M.A. Turn the plant loose on you. The potted piranha plant made an offended noise, turning its head toward the two troublemakers. I won't let him, Planty, Waluigi promised sincerely, before angrily turning back towards the two Miss. But I''M.M.A. Gonna have to do something if you two don't settle down. As if drawn in by the chaos, the yellow and blue villager, seemed to materialize out of thin air. She had actually come running, but it was so sudden and quick that one could have mistaken it for rapidly appearing. She, too, took a glass and threw it on the floor, adding to the mess. Wario and Waluigi exclaimed negatively once again, absolutely distraught by their awful behavior. No. Isabelle whimpered. You're better than that. Soon enough, Isabelle had hopped off of her chair to chase after the villager, and then Ms. Wolf, too, was quickly at her side, and he, with the help of Wario and Waluigi, sped after the creators of chaos. Pichu, Pichu! Pichu exclaimed exacerbated, shaking his head before returning to nibbling at his food. A long, scaly finger came to gently caress the yellow baby's head. You said it, little buddy. Some date, all right. You're one to talk, Mutwo muttered, sipping idly at his wine. You look like you walked through a minefield before coming here tonight. He's right, you know, Gindorf agreed. I think I saw holes in Phantom Ganon after Link violently shot 25 arrows into him. Ridley scowled at the other two villains. His suit was torn to absolute threads, and barely covered any of the space pirate spotting. Sharp claws and wings don't do formal. You're lucky I even made an attempt. Even Dark Samus looks better than you, Gindorf commented, taking another bite of his food. Again, he burned his mouth, letting out a stream of pseudo-curses. He wasn't wrong, however. Dark Samus had managed to find itself a suit and was absolutely rocking it. The massive shoulder pads of the power armor filled up the suit nicely. Curiously, Dark Samus picked up the glass itself, before emulating exactly what it had seen Warmio and Waluigi I had done. The glass shattered on the ground, much to the dismay of the villains still present. Dark Samus, however, seemed to have been amused. Across the way, another bringer of chaos was absolutely shivering with a need to cause mischief, but restrained herself. For once in her chaotic life, Peepee was using an ounce of self-control to not upset the other Ms. at her table. The auburn-haired Ms. was hardly tall enough to see the table with the food, let alone eat any of it. Though, for some reason, despite hating the little sundress she was forced into, something made the little Ms. feel calmer. The mid-table was buzzing with activity. To Peepee's left sat Long from Pennsylvania. The dopey-eyed Ms. didn't know how to clean herself up, dressing similar to how young Link was dressed. However, that didn't mean he had gained any intelligence points. Idly, he used a butter knife to stab at the bread he had been given to eat. Something about him made Peepee feel better about herself. And made her want to spend more time with him. To her left sat Kate. The usually pigtailed Ms. had done something different with her hair today, instead shaping it into a nutgo. Red roses danced along the hem of the white dress she wore, giving a look towards Peepee. The mother figure Ms. gave her a soft pat on the back. A reward for her good behavior. Peepee smiled happily, sinking back down to where she was seated. Kate's eyes returned to the man she was conversing with. To the other side, sat the original mid-brawler, named Saul. His hair remained the same, but he wore a black business suit with a red tie tucked in. Next to him came the Miss Swordfighter, Finn. Like Kate, he did something different with his hair. His hair almost remarked of his hair back in the Smash 4 days. He wore a black and blue tuxedo that has dark blue butterflies designed with dark blue dress pants. His Komoro was almost unsettling. Like Cloud, it seems he can't go anywhere without his blade strapped to his back. Finally, came the Mid-Gunner, Hannah. Her hair remained the same, but she did wear a flower crown that were in yellow and orange designed sunflowers, and she wore a Pantone yellow dress that almost shines the room. Even her gun that she too refuses to take off has a different design. Instead of the normal silver gun with light blue plasma charging in the gun, it's now a gold-yellow gun with white plasma. And then I said, "Oh, you mean, the Chaos Emerald?" Obama said, hardly being able to contain himself. The laughter was bubbling from deep within the Miz's chest, and when he reached the punchline, it gathered laughter from everyone around him. Happily, the Miz sat back, enjoying the happy laughter he brought to the conversation. Ah, it felt good to have Max charisma. Really? Nikki exclaimed, her eyes wide. It had been a while since she had actually interacted with other Miz. But when Alice invited her to sit with the rest of the Miz, the artist was more than happy to oblige. Karen was not happy with this idea, being that Nikki did major in art. But no one really gave any mind to what Karen had to say. "We've all heard this one a million times before," Alice hummed happily. Leaning backwards with a full stomach, the buttons on her suit seemed ready to burst. Graciously, her eyes turned to Nikki. The other Mir wore a dazzling green dress that had little emblems of pencils along it every inch or so. It looked fantastic, and the look of joy on Nikki's face was even better. "And it's the same shitty punchline every time," Karen grumbled, stabbing at her food violently. She had insisted they bring it back to the kitchen and bring her organic, gluten-free meat, to which the waitress expressed extreme confusion. Was it too much to ask for to get herself free-range chicken? "Don't be rude," Kate exclaimed. "I, for one, think it's hilarious." "You also think that reading and vaccinating is good, too, so that shows how far your intelligence goes," Karen shot back, with a glare. "Karen, please," the masked Miz spoke up. The suddenness of his deep voice was startling. Instead of his usual Pikmin-shaped mask, the masked Mir wore a masquerade mask to hide his identity. The white suit he wore was decorated many different kinds of shrubbery and flowers, ending with a flower crest above his chest. "There's no need to be such a asshole," Alice finished, giving Karen a death glare. Karen returned the look, furious. "Exactly," the masked Miz said, snapping. "No need to be such a that. I'll be as big of an asshole as I want." Karen shouted. "I'm just giving an opinion. I don't care what you AGH." There was a sudden pressure around Karen's neck, as a pair of invisible, purple hands grasped onto Karen. Shaking violently, the rest of the Miz simply watched on in horror as Karen seemed to have a seizure. Flailing around, Karen was finally released. And a soft purple spirit floated away, unseen to anyone but those who needed to see her. "Are you okay?" Obama asked. Shove it up your ass," Karen groaned, rubbing at her neck. As much as they didn't want to, the rest of the Miz moved to inspect Karen. As they did, Meatball, dressed festively with a flower in her fur, wandered past. For a brief moment, the cat rubbed against Kate's leg, before making the long walk towards the table where her master sat. There was one table that the Calico Cat hesitated at, however. The table housed a few assist trophies who couldn't seem to find a spot of their own. "Looks like I'm sitting at the loser's table again," Isaac muttered sadly, poking at the food he had. "What do you mean by that?" Crystal asked, raising a brow. "Who else would you think to sit by? Besides, it isn't that bad to sit here with us, now, is it?" "She's just upset that Fox's table is full," Lynn whispered loudly to Isaac. Crystal gave her a dirty look, but didn't refute it. She was, in fact, quite upset that Fox's table was full. "I dunno, really. But I mean, Shovel Knight of all guys found a seat to sit." Isaac mused, gesturing over towards Sonic's table. The Blue Knight sat happily between Sonic and Banjo, pouring potatoes in through the opening in his helmet. "I tell you what," Alucard said, dabbing gently at his lip with a cloth. "Once we finish here, I'll introduce you to my comrade, Richter. Then, the next time a massive celebration occurs, you won't feel so left out." "Really?" Isaac asked. He moved to hug Alucard, before remembering how much Alucard despised hugs. "You're the best, Al." "Don't call me Al," Alucard instructed, "but you're welcome." "Just kiss already," Lynn hollered. The swordswoman had had too much to drink already, and it was still early in the evening. Something told Crystal that she was on babysitting duty tonight. With the conversation done, Meatball continued on her way. It was only a short jaunt to the table where Luigi and the rest of his friends sat. Happily, the cat hopped onto the seat that had been reserved for her, and began rubbing up against Luigi happily. "Oop, hiya there, Meatball." Luigi smiled down to her. He was careful not to pet her too aggressively. Orange fur didn't come off of black suits very easily. It wasn't very often that the timid Mario brother dressed up. But when he did, he rocked it. With a pair of sunglasses, he could look like an official Mushroom Kingdom undercover operator. "Looks like the party's here, now. Welcome to town, cat." King Dedede laughed, patting at his round belly. He had scarfed down enough food for the lot of them, but still felt a growling hunger deep within his stomach. "Hey waiter? 2 more orders of whatever that was." "Eat," Kirby requested, waving his new little hand in the air as well. The pink puffball pulled off his conductor's outfit quite well. Somehow, the magenta top hat balanced perfectly on the top of his round head. "Mr. King Dedede?" Ness asked. The psychic itched under his collar, letting some cool air rush down to the hot part of his body. "Why didn't you dress up for tonight?" "Oh, cripes," Meta Knight muttered. He'd heard enough about this already. But King Dedede was more than willing to tell it all again. Puffing out his chest, the big penguin began to explain. "You see, Ness, boy, I'm here what most folk call a king," King Dedede proudly proclaimed. "When you's a king, people expect to see you on your best behavior and best dress at all times, otherwise they lose faith in the kingdom. I ain't got nothing fancier than these here royal robes, you see? People lost faith in the kingdom a long time ago." "Dedede," Meta Knight muttered, rubbing at his mask. No, he's got a point," Daisy interjected, pointing a forkful of pork at Meta Knight. "You've gotta always be dressed to impress. That's why, whenever I'm not playing sports or whatever, I'm always in that orange, buffy thing you always see me in. Even here in the Smash tournaments I wear it." Meta Knight and Ness stared at Daisy for a second, before Ness spoke up again. "If that dress is as fancy as you get, why are you changed here tonight?" the kid asked. Daisy rose a finger to respond to that, before her mouth shut again. She had abandoned her usual orange dress in favor of a more fitting skater's dress. Honestly, she had chosen to wear it because it was much more comfortable than the dress she usually wore. "No further questions. Let's talk about Pit," Daisy suddenly exclaimed, turning to her right. "This must be the Tiki we always hear so much about." Both Pit and Tiki were taken off guard by Daisy's sudden change of subject. All eyes at the table suddenly turned towards the two of them. Even Guigi, who had been intensively staring at the table just moments before, turned his head upward to look at the two at the end of the table. "Hi," Pit exclaimed awkwardly, rubbing at the back of his head. I didn't expect to be, put on the spot like this." "PSSHHH, you get used to it," Luigi murmured shyly. This earned him a little pinch on the cheek by his beloved, which made his cheeks flare up. "So. Why you both look great tonight." "Thank you," Tiki smiled, taking the compliment from Luigi. Luigi wasn't wrong. The duo looked ravishing. Pit was outfitted in a white tuxedo that accommodated excellently for his wing. At his collar he wore a vibrant red bow tie. His hair was kept up nice and relaxed, fitting perfectly into his crown. But Tiki took the cake. The duo matched fantastically. Tiki's white, stripeless dress had streaks of red running throughout. A pink ribbon tied itself around her waist, keeping the whole look together. Her hair was done up and braided, adding an extra layer of beauty to those natural green locks of hers. She seemed to radiate the pure aura. And the same could be said about her boyfriend. "How'd you two meet, anyway?" King Dedede asked, curious. Pit and Tiki exchanged a quick glance between each other, before Tiki spoke again. "My friend at the Assist Trophy Motel knocked him out, and I was elected to be the one who took care of him," Tiki explained. "We really just hit it off from there." "No kidding, huh?" Dedede mused. "Maybe someday someone will knock some sense into you like that, sire," Meta Knight offered. "Unlikely. I got me a head of steel," King Dedede exclaimed, pounding on his head. He allowed Kirby and Guigi to take a crack at it, but urged them to stop before it got too painful. "I'm more curious about where you got your hair done," Daisy excitedly tittered. "Whoever did it had to be, like, some kind of hair goddess." "Funny you should mention that." Tiki started, but didn't need to finish. "I did," Palutena hummed, making an appearance behind the other green-haired woman. "Tiki and I had a little bit of a girls' day out before coming to this thing." "Hell Lady Palutena," Pit exclaimed suddenly, bowing his head to his goddess. "Please, Pit, there's no need for that right now. We're all just here to have a good time, isn't that right?" she mused, tilting Pit's chin upward. Pit offered a smile, before shying away. Sorry, reflex," Pit said, rubbing at the backside of his head. "Isn't he just the cutest?" Tiki exclaimed happily. Everyone at the table laughed at that, making Pit's blush deepen. While his light counterpart lived it up with his friends and significant other, Dark Pit sat alone in a corner of the music room. He had made sure to make himself seen as little as possible in the past weeks, and for good measure. He'd been on the long road to recovery with this stupid broken arm. And didn't like people all that much, anyway. He sat alone, with only a purple tie on to meet the formal requirement. His mind was somewhere else, and he had hardly even eaten the food that had been served to him. However, fate had a funny way of bringing two people together. "Is this seat taken?" Dark Pit's eyes rose up to meet a friendly face. A pair of glasses covered the eyes of Anywhoo, who stood with a gloved hand on a chair beside Dark Pit. "No," Pitu responded. "But I don't think you want to take it, either." "Sure I do," Ren told the other. "I am a thief, after all. Taking things is what we do best." "Then you can take a hike, Joker. Can't you see I want to be alone?" Dark Pit shot back, crimson eyes looming up towards the other's cool rays. "You might want to be alone right now. But I know what you need," Ren told him. Without a second thought, Joker moved to sit in the chair. Pitu didn't object. "What you need right now is a friend." Before the two could get much deeper into conversation, they were interrupted by a loud, booming voice. Never before did Pitu want the announcer to go fuck himself more than right now. "We here at the Smash Hotel wish to thank each and every one of you for being so influential to the story that we have had here so far," the announcer started. His voice was sharp and crisp, like the crack of a whip. "I am pleasured to introduce the main speakers for tonight's big events. Please, put your hands together for Master Hand, Crazy Hand, and Master Core." A chorus of claps rang out, as Master Hand and Crazy Hand materialized on the stage at the head of the room, completing their own formal get-up with a bow tie tied at the end of their wrists. Master Core, unlucky enough to not be granted this ability, rolled its way up the stairs. It, too, had a bow tie on. "Thank you for your compliance and for the warm welcome." Master Hand beamed. There was a smile clearly viable in his voice. "When I look out into this crowd today—" "Hold on a tick," Crazy Hand interrupted, holding up a hand to stop his brother. "We're missing two Sumyones. Where's Little Mac?" Once again, right on cue, the door to the music room was flung open. Little Mac and Sriracha the Incineroar rushed in as quickly as they could, looking as if they had just fought in a war to make it here today. Burn marks marked up Mac's face, and his rental tuxedo was charred a deeper shade of black than was originally intended. Incineroar wore little more than a bow tie and scraps of fabric he had burned off. Sorry we're late," Little Mac exclaimed, all but tumbling down the stairs. Sriracha doesn't like suits." Incineroar happily exclaimed, a smug look gracing his features. He swaggered his way down the stairs with all the pride in the world. Master Hand, Crazy Hand, and Master Core looked on for a moment in utter shock, before Master Hand cleared his voice. "Well then. That's one way to make an entrance," Master Core mused. Hey, when do we get to handing out the prizes?" "We're getting to that," Crazy Hand exclaimed. "Hold your horses, okay?" Master Core transformed into Master Beast, the swarm overtaking him in the moment. "This is as close as it comes to a horse. Is this okay?" Master Beast asked. "Smartass," Crazy Hand grumbled. Smugly, Master Core returned to its core form. If it had lips, it would be wearing the most shit-eating grin imaginable. "Anyway, back on track," Master Hand said. "We've had some fun here so far. We've had laughs, and we've had tears. We've had good times, and we've had bad times." Crazy Hand faked coughing, before throwing in the words "Reset Temple." This got the floating hand an array of disappointed looks. He took them all with pride. There has been love, hatred, deceit, and comradeship. We've been through it all, and I, for one, could not have asked for a better group of smashers to share this experience with. Today is a day to celebrate all of the great accomplishments you all have accomplished. Master Core made fake snoring sounds, which stopped Master Hand right in his tracks. The giant hand looked down at the little ball. "The Core's right, Master Hand. You're getting way too sappy," Crazy agreed, pointing at Core. "When do we get to the prizes?" Core asked again, impatient. Fine, whatever. I was almost done anyway, but if you're going to be rude about it, we can move on," Master Hand huffed, throwing out his cue cards. "Anyway, we here have arranged some prizes for each and every one of you gathered here today. Crazy? Would you like to do the honors?" Crazy Hand shot Master Hand with a finger gun. "Sure thing, Master Hand. Let me see here." Fumbling around for his own cue card. Everyone was on the edge of their seat, to see exactly what it was that these prizes were. "Ah, yes, here we go." Crazy Hand started. "And, the award for greatest hotel manager in the history of the Smash tournaments goes to—" "Oh lord, I really hope that's me," Captain Falcon giddily exclaimed. "Goes. Ta-oo-oo-oo-oo-oo." Crazy hyped up, despite everyone, minus Captain Falcon, that is, knowing who it was going to. "I'm here for my prize, Crazy." A voice suddenly rang out. "WHO said that?" Crazy Hand asked, surveying the area. "Falcon? Was that you? 'Cause this prize ain't for you." "Oh, man." Captain Falcon muttered sadly. The doors to the music room swung open once again, and so did a blinding white light. A figure of a man stood there, and as the eyes adjusted to the light, it soon became clear to everyone just who it was who stood before them. A man in a red tuxedo. "Hello, everyone," the red-coated figure exclaimed, waving a hand to everyone in attendance. "You didn't think you could have a formal chapter without the king of formal himself, did you? Max had come home. My. What kind of party is this? You all look so dashingly beautiful," Max quipped, adjusting the tie he wore with one hand and flaunting his cane with the other. Dramatically, the man in the red tuxedo trotted down the stairs, shit-eating grin stretching across his lips. "Glad I got the memo to dress up. Say, Master, and Crazy Hand, what exactly is it that you two were celebrating, anyway? Do you have any idea?" "Of course we do," Crazy Hand exclaimed. "We're celebrating the wonderful accomplishments of our esteemed cast. Can't you see they're busy right now? Also, in addition, who the heck are you?" Close enough," Max shrugged. Touching down on the wooden floor, the Lord of Knowledge tapped forward with his cane. Stooping, Max offered the hands and Korobo, his eyes dropping low to the floor. "You two know my name, and those eyes looking in right now know me, but some of you chumps here don't. My name is..." "Max?" Mark finally exclaimed, working up through the shot to speak. "What on God's green earth are you doing here?" "You know him?" Nora asked, questioningly, lightly tugging on the sleeve of Mark's suit coat. "Unfortunately," Mark started. But his sudden outburst had caught the attention of the all-knowing megalomaniac. "Why? Mark, my friend. It's been so long. I've missed you so much, my friend. And I do owe you a thank you. It's because of you that I can actually make it here today," Max exclaimed. A hand went up to comb through his sleek black hair, before his eyes turned to Mark's wife. Even through the sunglasses, Nora could feel the look Max gave her. And it rattled her bones. It was the look of someone who knew too much. "Ah, and you must be Nora. I've read so much about you, darling, and you're just as lovely as the description. I never thought I'd live to see the day when we finally met. Suddenly, Max was hoisted off of his feet. With a startled sound, the man in the red tuxedo was slammed backwards onto the ground. Painfully, he released a groan, as the cane he had tumbled away and off to the side. "Incineroar," Sryrock boasted, taunting over the body of the man he had just destroyed. His fiery belt burned hotter than before, as pride soared through Incineroar's veins. It almost made up for the lack of formal attire that the cat wore. "Quick! Get that there cane!" King Dedede exclaimed, hopping off his spot at the writer's table. Confusion was in the air, as only a select few knew the power that was vested within the man who now lay on the floor. He ain't nothing but bad news. What's happening?" Male Robin exclaimed, as Lucina, Richter, and Solo dashed forward after Max and his cane. In their rush forward, a plate was sent ahead, landing squarely in Robin's lap, ruining the suit he'd spent decades trying to get into. "Oh, man." Mass confusion ensued, as an assault on Max was put in motion. Those who had been to Smashverse 169 rushed in to assist King Dedede and Incineroar. Those who hadn't sat in confusion, watching the events transpire. And the one inhabitant that had lived in Smashverse 169, Syl, broke out into panicked tears, as her worst fear seemingly came true. "You can have the Phenoscopter back when you pull it from my cold, dead feathers," Falco exclaimed, ruffling not only his feathers, but his suit, too. It wasn't too big of a deal, though. Falco struggled to make himself look halfway presentable in the first place. Lucina, Ike, and Roy had all brought their respective blades with them, and were prepared to strike down their enemy where he lay. Richter couldn't find a place on his suit for a whip, so instead he brought out a flask of holy water. Fox, Falco, and Wolf all pulled for their blasters. Samus readied her brass knuckles. A booming voice rang out. The announcer, using his powers to dictate gravity, lifted those around Max off and into the air, before tossing them aside like nothing more than rag dolls. Some landed gracefully. Even in a dress, Lucina landed on her feet like a cat. Mutwo hovered above the ground, as the gravity was returned to him. Snake's dress shoes skidded across the floor, as he, too, returned to form, ready to dash forward again after the crumpled man. Others, however, were not as graceful. King Dedede, for one, was not graceful. He and Kirby bounced back like a couple of basketballs. Cyan hit the ground, hard, but circumvented this by turning into his squid form moments after the blow. Wolf lay sprawled out on the ground, staring at the ceiling, before being helped to his feet by Isabel and Meta Knight. "What do you mean, that's enough?" Little Max shouted, doing his best to mimic the announcer's voice. He was far from spot on. "We haven't done enough, otherwise he'd never show his face here again." Little Mac dashed forward again, only to be met with some kind of force field. It knocked him backward. And try as he might, he couldn't break through. Mark, in desperation, turned towards the hands. "Why, you can't be serious? This man tried to kill me. You can't let Xander." "Silence," Master Hand commanded. His word made a hush fall over everyone in the audience, including the side conversations being held by those who hadn't been to Smashverse 169. "I do believe you've all been very, very rude to our guest." "Guest?" everyone included exclaimed. "Yes, guest," Master Hand responded. "Maxwell had RSVP'd. Sent us a letter and everything." Master Core piped up. "Usually we're the ones sending letters. To get one instead is such a weird thing." But? Mark stammered. He threw a glance at Max, who upscaled the degree of his injury for maximum sympathy points. Everyone had been decked by Incineroar before, and everyone knew how bad it hurt. Max, feigning a more severe injury, slowly made his way to his feet, supporting his weight with his cane. When Max realized Mark was looking at him, he gave his counterpart a toothy grin, before returning to his pain state. "Oh my." Max sighed out. I didn't expect hospitality like this. And after such a long ride." "He's faking," Snake growled. "My code name might be Snake, but he's the real Snake here." Still at it, I see." Max sighed softly. "Not only do you have to destroy me physically, but mentally as well." "Guys, please," Crazy Hand tittered, like a mother scolding her children. "The guy's come a long way for this. This isn't what we're about." "Senseless violence?" "Yes it is," Falco shouted back. Crazy Hand gave the bird a look that expressed disappointment without facial features. "You all seem to have some pretty strong opinions on our new companion," the announcer boomed. "Surely you can work them out in a better way than this." "He tried to kill me," Mark responded. "Most people have tried to kill you," Crazy Hand bickered back. "And yet, I don't see you suplexing Mario." What?" Mario asked, shocked by the mention of his own name. "When did I try to kill Mark?" "A long story," Mark muttered, before returning to the issue at hand. Well, Hands. Listen. You don't know what you're doing. Why would you let him in here after just one letter?" "Generosity," Master Core exclaimed. "No, we aren't generous," Crazy Hand responded. He gave the tiny Core a small, affectionate rub, however. "Good try, though, bud. Maxwell has an impressive resume, Mark. I believe he would make a wonderful addition around here," Master Hand explained, much to the disapproval of those involved. "You already underpay the staff you have here," Mark shouted. "Why would you bring in?" With a snap of his finger, Master Hand silenced those opposing him. There was an anger growing in the floating white hand. "Listen. I understand we all hold opinions of others here. If you have a problem with Maxwell, please, file a report at the Master Office and we will look into IT. For the time being, we're here to celebrate, and bring a new member into our big, Smash Y family." "Aha. He said it. He said it," Max exclaimed, giddy, before remembering the act he was trying to portray. In an instant, he was back to his pitiful, hurt self. I am honored to be here. Maxwell? We apologize for the behavior of our smashers. We will send you to the clinic for a checkup to assure there are no broken bones or fractured insides," Master Hand said. "Mamma mia." Dr. Mario groaned, pushing out his seat next to Leaf. "Ain't no rest perfect, eh? Bah, maybe it's a good to get back to work. Too many people here, anyway. You two are okay, though," the doctor said, pointing to Red and Leaf. "Please, escort him out, Xander," Master Hand instructed. Max floated inches off the ground, as the announcer gently lifted him up and whisked him up the stairs. As he was leaving, he and Mark locked eyes again. If looks could kill, Max would be a dead man. But Mark would have gone insane. That same, toothy grin spread Max's lips. He had a foot in the door. "Oop, there it is. He wrote it. He wrote it." Max laughed. No one in particular. All was going according to plan. Mark and a handful of others sat in the Master Office, awaiting trial with the two beings that had gotten them into this mess in the first place. With arms crossed firmly over his chest, he looked up into the endless void that was the space above his head, not paying much mind to anything that was happening around him. The other few-dimensional travelers, as they had come to call themselves, were having their own little side conversations, constructing the best argument against the inclusion of Max in the hotel. Mark, on the other hand, was doing nothing of the sort. Trapped in his own mind, fragments of what Max had told him in the other dimension had come to resonate within him. That voice. He might not be able to begin to decipher what it meant, but he knew something more was there. Something life-shattering, if only he could understand.
I know a lot of things, Mark. A lot of multiverse-shattering things.
The same distorted laughter as usual came from the endless ceiling, as Master Hand and Crazy Hand made their appearances, startling those who were present. Do you always have to do that? King Dedede asked, his eyes rocketing upwards towards the two floating white gloves. Don't it get a little, I don't know, repetitive? Boring? The reactions are always priceless. Crazy Hand exclaimed. We've come to hold order in the court you promised us, I told the hands, gruffly. I'm sure you'll see our point once we explain it to you. It is quite odd how all of you seem to react so violently towards a man I presume has never been to this hotel, Master Hand responded. Although, I don't believe violence was the best alternative you could have turned to. You don't know him like we did, Little Max said. Incineroar was beside the boxer, making obscene gestures every time Max was so much as mentioned. If you knew what he did to Mark, you'd want to punch him in the face, too.
I know that our reality is a lie.
If it were anyone else, Max's ramblings that day in the office would have sounded like nothing more than the ravings of a madman. Maybe they were. But, being that Max was the Lord of Knowledge, Mark's disbelief was suspended. What did he know that the others didn't? What was he doing in this realm?
This dimension? A work of fiction. Your home dimension? Fake. I can't see into the future, but I've seen the present. We're just words on an internet webpage, going down a predetermined path, Mark.
To be fair, I get these urges to just punch things anyway, so I really don't doubt it, Crazy Hand cackled. All eyes turned towards the hand, concerned. What? I'm called Crazy Hand for a reason. Are you good? Sonic asked. Of course not. Crazy exclaimed.
Ashamed, Mark. If I had the free will, I wouldn't act like this. We could be friends, you and I.
Mark didn't trust him as far as he could throw him. Which wasn't very far. What? What did he tell you, Mark? Richter asked, concern leaking into his voice. Mark had been staring ahead at nothing for what felt like forever. Richter's words brought the manager back to reality. Mark blinked twice, as reality hit him again. Yes. Let's start from the beginning, Master Hand proposed. What on earth led to this hatred? Well, Mark started.
Breathing. Heavy breathing. His breathing. Everything was beginning to make sense. The world he lived in was starting to fall sickeningly into place, like a jigsaw puzzle revealing an extremely disturbing, unerring picture. His head felt like it was about to explode. The red helmet atop his head could no longer retain the massive surge his mind was having. His bones felt too small for his body, as a disturbing understanding wrapped him tightly. That was the worst part. He would have been fine if it had just been knowledge. The understanding and comprehension of his knowledge had been what threw him over the edge. The understanding is what pushed him to the state that he was in. Crumpled on the damp, stone floor, he felt like weeping, as the crushing reality sunk in. It was no use. There was no point. His breathing grew heavier, as if he were a dog longing for water on a hot summer day. He had lost what little control he thought that he had had. Suddenly, there was a presence beside him. A blinding light. A force. He shielded his eyes, but it was no use once more. The light was too bright. Why? Was the simple question he asked. We told you not to touch it, the presence told him. We warned you that you wouldn't like what happened. And yet, here you are. You were given specific instructions and you failed to follow them. Why is it my reality that isn't real? Why must I be subjected to this torture? He exclaimed at the presence, his gustling voice returning to him, and returning loudly. Why? Why can't I exist? Your path is not predetermined, the voice told him. You've been cursed with this knowledge. You chose this. It is up to you now what you choose to do with it. As suddenly as it had come, the presence was gone. The crushing feeling was still upon him. It felt as if he had been run over by a steamroller, and then had 1,000-ton rocks poured on top of his flattened body. But still, there was no weeping. Instead, a smile began to creep over his face. Before he knew it, he was giggling. And then, he was full on laughing. The laugh lacked any happiness whatsoever. In its place was a contentment for the very beings that had come to create him. He'd exist. He willed it.
The worst part was knowing that, in a few more words, the darkness of the void would overtake him once again. Master Hand listened as the story spun to him with wrapping up, and meeting its conclusion. A feeling of subtle dread was within him. The supposedly all-knowing being, which was a crock of pitch dropping. Master Hand and Crazy Hand hardly knew the names of all the fighters here. Hand felt as if he had made a mistake. Over the years, you all have never given me any reason to doubt you, Master Hand muttered, making a motion to stroke an invisible beard. Perhaps we have made a small lapse in judgment by allowing Maxwell to be here. Small? It's like you invited Robotonic over for a steak dinner. Sonic exclaimed. I'd say this is more Dracula levels of bad, Richter responded. Grima? Lucina added. Yeah, we definitely fucked up, Crazy Hand enthusiastically exclaimed, before elbowing his brother. We sure do let a lot of mass-murdering psychopaths in here, don't we, Mazda? Don't call me that, Master Hand commanded, and I'd say our rate is pretty low. This is only the second, ISNTIT? And the first nearly tore the multiverse in half, Mark groaned. Listen. Max is extremely unstable. He's thinking 20 steps ahead of any of us, and I wouldn't be surprised if he were listening in to us right now. The guy's seriously screwed. King Dedede shouted. How could he trust a man who's always in a suit? Speaking of appearances, has anyone actually seen Maxwell since his arrival yesterday? Master Hand asked. Glances were exchanged, and the answer came to be a resounding no. Great, Master Hand muttered. We've got a manhunt on our hands, gentlemen and men. Crazy Hand stated. First one to bring him back gets a crisp high five, Crazy Hand. Please take this seriously, Master Hand huffed. We have a real problem on our hands. Where was Max? The shadows swallowed him whole. With all the time he had spent in the void, Max knew a thing or two about not being seen. He'd make it here, all right. He'd exist. He willed it. The clock was against him, and our dashing hero Max knew that. As the hours grew longer, he knew that his chance to escape was growing thinner and thinner. Hopefully, his plan was bound to work. Max was a smart individual. An incredibly smart individual. In fact, he was practically all-knowing. But still, there were a few things that were out of his range of knowledge. The average individual couldn't read the situations around him the way that he could. They couldn't read the past like he could. They couldn't read the Elder Gods like he could. Max knew the Elder Gods of days gone past were dead. But, if this whole crazy life had taught him one thing, it was that the dead rarely ever stay dead. Through natural process or some great handwriting and dropping hints in advance, the universe always found a way to place the souls of those it most desired back into a physical form. It helped when he had a manuscript to guide him. It helped when he read the origins of the Elder Gods. In his boundless free time, Max read. And he read a lot of things. This expanded the knowledge that he already had. This world was a fake. The reality was nothing more than an illusion. But the Elder Gods had a link into a world that was real. The very gods who had forced him into this world were watching from somewhere beyond, behind screens of some sort, and mocking him. They watched him struggle vainly for a reality where he was real and not some raving lunatic being told how he felt and what he was doing. It was ironic, he admitted inwardly, that he was openly defying the wills of the Elder Gods while knowing full well that he was not in control of his own actions. Everything he did, be it waking up in the morning to staging a rebellion of this nature, was dictated by the hand of someone else. If he focused hard enough, he could almost see the dopey face of someone typing his every move. He pushed the thought out of his head, as he readied his plan. With his infinite knowledge and ability to read the situation, he knew that Captain Falcon and his group of hooligans would be here in mere minutes. Unless the 5 of them had gotten lost along the way. Then, later, Falco, Pitt, and the others would probably stumble across him, and he'd probably have to fight his way out, as much as he wished not to get his hands dirty. Really cliché, Max commented snidely. Max was a bitch. Hey. He's right, you know. Stay out of this. As a matter of fact, stop the music. What are you, my dear editor Ahmad? Be a dear and change my theme song please. Why? What's wrong with it? Several things, but do I need to bring up you're using a Dragon Ball song, not the video game, the actual show? Imagine if Toei saw this video, it would be utter chaos. I hate that makes sense. Ugh, alright, let's see. How about this? That'll do just fine, dearie. The distaste for the moment was halted as a certain someone made herself known. Max froze in the position that he was in. He was, suspiciously, holding a screwdriver inches away from the door of one of the rooms that occupied the hotel. Max and the pig-tailed man made eye contact, before something in Max instructed him to act. Flicking his screwdriver back into the pocket of his coat, Max offered Kate a wide grin. "Kate. Honey. It's been such a long time. Don't you remember old Maxie? Lord of the Temple of Knowledge? I was always such a big fan of the way you made people feel those motions. Do you think you could help a fella out in his time of need?" Kate stood solid for a moment, as she took in the sight before her. The motherly miss said nothing, as most miss did, and looked directly ahead at the man who had made such a shocking and startling appearance. "I'll take that as a no," Max mused, a hand moving to run through his jet black hair. Maybe that was for the better. "Listen, I know I sound crazy, and I know that this whole plan could have serious detriments to myself and the others here, but you know what? At this point I don't really care. They won't feel a thing, because they don't exist. I don't exist. You don't exist. But if there's even a slim chance for me to exist, I'll take every single little sliver I can take to make a dream a reality. My plan is to round up you and the rest up." "Hey, there he is." Max groaned. He must have miscalculated the intelligence of those following him. Sometimes Max felt like the entire multiverse was against him. "Ah, what a pleasant surprise," Max deadpanned, his voice void of any of the usual wit or emotion he would usually put behind it. "You aren't going to get away with this one, Max," little Mac exclaimed. "You don't even know what I'm trying to do, nor could you possibly understand what my intentions are at any given point," Max huffed. "You really ought to stop treating me like some run-of-the-mill villain, gentlemen. My cause is just, and I haven't even killed anyone yet." "Yet?" Shulk asked. Max shrugged, non-committally. "I'd rather not get blood on my suit, but who knows what the future holds. Apparently neither I nor you do, Shulk." "How did you?" Shulk began. "I know a lot of things, friend. Things that would melt your mind. Now, please, if you'll excuse me, I'll wait a moment. Where's that cat of yours?" Flicking quickly behind himself, Incineroar was trying to sneak up on him once again. Taking his cane, Max swung behind him, smacking the big cat upside the head. "K the boss music." "Oh, you think you're funny, huh? Ha, nope, I'm adorable." "Roar." Incineroar cried out, slamming into the wall with the strength of its wing. That would leave a mark. And the wall suffered a blow as well. Max had been body slammed one too many times to fall for that one again. "Hey! The only one who beats that cat up is me," little Mac exclaimed, full of rage, or the other way around, but that's besides the point. "Come and get me, then, boys," Max challenged. He held his cane as if he were a batter ready to swing at an oncoming ball. Letting out a cry, Captain Falcon charged forward with an actual baseball bat. The supersonic slugger charged ahead, and sending Max flying out the window at the end of the hall. However, Max saw this coming. Parrying off to the left, he skillfully dodged a swing from the captain. Taking his foot, Max put the force heated into one solid kick. Falcon had the wind knocked out of him pretty easily, slamming down to the ground and letting out a harsh breath. The baseball bat crumpled to the ground beside him. Next up to bat was Rob. Shooting lasers ahead of him, the robotic operating buddy was intent on ending Max's career right then and there. He honestly did not seem on intending to stop. A spark of inspiration hit him. Or, well, flew right past his head, as a stray laser nearly contacted one of Rob's teammates. Taking the, still recovering, form of Falcon, Max held him up front like a human shield. Falcon was hardly able to fight back. The strategy seemed to work, as Rob, confused and frightened for his friend, stopped firing. That was all Max needed. Tossing Douglas forward, he knocked Rob with the form of his buddy, before landing a solid kick to the robot's middle section. This knocked the poor bot over, with Falcon keeling over right on top of him. A vision. Shulk saw the outcome of the battle. They were going to win, but only if they stayed in attack all at the same time. Little Mac from the back. Falcon from the front. Himself and the others from the flanks. How hard could it be to take out one man armed only with a metal cane? "Guys!" Shulk barked suddenly, gathering the attention of his teammates. "We've got him." Whack. Shulk was hit, and hit hard, by the ball of his cane. With a squeak, Shulk hit the carpeted floor in front of one of the mirror doors. "Not so fast, Shulk," Max grinned, spinning his cane in one hand. "I saw that, too. Don't you think for a moment you can outthink me?" I'm in your mind, reading the pages. Turning quickly, Max dodged a left hook little Mac threw out. Then, a right. Using his cane as a shield, he parried the flurry that little Mac threw at him. Hopping over the down form of Incineroar, Max hooked upward swiftly with his cane, catching Mac in the jaw. The moment of shock that followed was all that he needed to take the boxer out. Sweeping a leg under the boxer's muscled legs, little Mac was in the carpet. A swift foot met his chest. 8, 9, 10. Knockout. Max tauntingly called out, toothy grin stretching his mug once again. That was a good attempt, boys, but you're going to have to try harder than that to best told Maxie. We're not gonna let you get away with this. Little Mac, pain, got out. Max looked down on the boxer with a pity in his heart. The poor boy had no idea that he wasn't in control of his own actions. It's cute that you even think you have a choice, Max quipped back. Taking the cane in his hand, he shot a wave of paradoxical energy into Max's head. With a groan, Max's eyes rolled, as his mind was forced to close. It wasn't anything major. Just something to deter the poor boy from coming after Max for the next few hours. Doing the same to Incineroar, the only one who looked as if he could still fight, Max cleaned his hands on his pants and straightened his tie. Right. Now, where were we? Ah. Right. Kate? Looking around, Max couldn't find hide nor pigtail from the She must have ran off during the fight. No doubt to the other Ms. and the other reincarnations. Gods damn it, Max cursed eloquently. The strong-willed man would not give up so easily. Moving from the carnage in the hallway, Max left, hot on the trail of the ones who held the power he needed. Hopefully, when this was all said and done, he could shake their hand personally. Let me get this straight. None of you know where this highly dangerous, extremely good-looking, and trasmatic hotel manager is right now? It was true. Max had somehow slipped under the radar of those who had been hunting him, and bamboozled them ever so well. Ah. No, Mario admitted, not having any way to sugarcoat the situation. Me and my party have looked all over the A hotel. And he's nowhere to be seen. He's real good, Mr. Announcer. Pit mused, scratching at the backside of his head. I wish Lady Palutena's Omnivision or whatever she uses was working right now. It's like he's got a force field around him. What does that lunatic want, anyway? King Dedede exclaimed. If it's revenge, wouldn't it be smarter to go all in, swinging for the fences? No, came Mewtwo's psychic voice. Mentally, the powerful Pokemon face-palmed. That would be the opposite of a smart move. Aren't you, like, some kind of omnipotent presence in the hotel? Pit asked the announcer, a fist resting his chin. Couldn't you tell us where he is? You can see everywhere. Xander paused. After a moment of silence, the announcer cleared his voice. Attention, all smashers. Max is currently located in the right wing of the hotel, headed southbound. Apprehend him immediately. Right a wing? Mario exclaimed. Headed south? Pit gasped. King Dedede was looking at his mitted hands, trying to decipher which one was right and which one was left. With mittens on, it was significantly harder to tell. Let's say go get this perp. Mario yahooed, sprinting off in the direction the announcer has directed him in. Quickly, he was followed up by Pit and Mewtwo. Hey, where are you fellas going? King Dedede exclaimed, picking up his hammer. Wait for me. The sudden announcement did throw a bit of a wrench into Max's plan. But it was one he had accounted for. He knew that eventually the entire hotel would know his location whether he willed it or not. It was an inevitable crutch of storytelling. He supposed that he was destined to be the villain no matter how just his own cause was. But she was close. Another wielder of the power he so desired was close at hand. There was a tingling in his bones, that grew sharper as he continued on down his path. If it were excitement or dread was up in the air. But he knew whoever it was right at hand. Turning the corner, Max was greeted with what he desired. Frantically, Kate was telling Alice something in the language of the Miz. It was a language that took more than a few sleepless nights to completely comprehend. But when his entire life was a void, anyway, Max had those sleepless nights to spare. Ah, what a pleasant surprise. Max beamed gallantly, bowing to the two Miz before him. I didn't know I'd be in the presence of two lovelies like you. If I had known, I'd have worn something more fancy. You've got a lot of nerve coming around here, Alice defensively stated. Hurting those innocents. Do you honestly think they felt anything? Max tittered, tapping the bottom of his cane against the carpeting of the hotel's floor. Those innocents hadn't the will nor the author's grace to best me in that scuffle. Don't worry. Something tells me I won't need to stage another fight to get what I want out of this situation. Why's that? Kate asked, fearfully hiding behind Alice. She was a lover, not a fighter. Alice, on the other hand, was a fighter, not a lover. Max turned his eyes towards Kate. Ah, there's the escape artist herself. Nice to meet once more, Kate. As for your question. Suddenly, Max flicked his cane up to the eyes of the two Ms. With a jolt of energy, the two incarnations suffered a fate similar to that of Little Mac and Incineroar. With a blast of paradoxical energy, the two Ms. minds were in Max's grasp. Alice went down without too much of a struggle once the anomaly hit. Like a sack of bricks, she hit the carpet. Kate, on the other hand, managed to stay standing for a moment, struggling to fight it off. However, clutching her head, she slumped, meeting the same fate as Alice. Don't see why villains don't do that more often, the dashing fellow hummed with a shrug. Monologuing is quite fun and all, but why drag it out for suspense? Bah, media nowadays. Scooping the two Ms onto his back, our brilliant hero prepared himself to set off towards another location. There were more to pick up, after all. Max sighed, stopping in his tracks. Right. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. Another cliché. Announcing yourself instead of going for a sneak attack? Max hummed, checking his watch for no particular reason. Pretty foolish, Wolf. The star dog let out a low snarl. Please. We've got you surrounded. I don't need to go for a sneak attack. Jay, just give up. Isabelle exclaimed, as forcefully as she could. It fell far flat of intimidating. We don't want to hurt you. Rounding the other corner, Sonic, Falco, and Fox made their appearance. We've got you trapped, Max. Sonic restated. Give up. Or what? You're going to suggest you split up again? Max jabbed. The comment took Sonic aback. How did he? Please, don't think that. You know I know a lot of things. We aren't afraid to end you, Fox said, pointing his blaster. Then why haven't you? Max asked. This back and forth won't get you anywhere. You can it, Falco instructed. His finger was itching on the trigger. Or I'll make your skin color match the suit. Isabelle readied her slingshot, with a quivering lip, while Wolf readily held his own blaster forward. Sonic jabbed in place, ready to lay the looping down on Max. We're gonna stop whatever reality warping scheme you've got cooking up, Sonic proclaimed. There it was. Max knew he was waiting for a specific K to launch his next move. Don't you know? Your reality bends to my will, Max told them, a smirk curling his lip. Moving quickly, Max ducked to the right, throwing open the door to the nearby janitor's closet. Blaster and slingshot fire filled the hallway, only narrowly missing those across the way by mere inches. Nice try, kid. Hiding under the covers ain't gonna make the monster go away this time. Falco shouted to the janitor's closet. Taking his blaster, Falco shot into the closet 5 times, without regard for what was behind it. F Falco. Isabelle exclaimed. What about those Ms he was carrying? A small price to pay, the bird shrugged. We want this guy dead, don't we? I think you might have succeeded. Wolf muttered, pointing to the ground. A red substance was leaking out from under the door and into the carpet. The liquid was quick to stain, and sticky to step in. Blake. Falco. I think you might have gone a little overboard. Fox commented, lifting his boot up and out of the blood. We can't just leave his body in there. Sonic said. Those poor janitors. How would they react? Not well, I'm sure, Wolf murmured. You're right. But it's probably going to be a little raunchy in there. Isabelle? She was way ahead, covering her eyes and not looking at the door. Wolf nodded to the others, signaling Fox to open it. Creeping forward, Fox's fingers gripped the handle of the door. With a gulp, he opened the door, not mentally prepared for what he saw. What in the? Fox muttered. What is it? Isabelle asked shyly. Flinging the door open, Fox revealed that what had been hit on the inside was not, in fact, a stupendous individual. And was, in fact, a bucket of red paint. Max was nowhere to be seen, and neither were the two Ms. Disgruntled, Falco shoved his blaster back into his holster. The ace pilot had to physically bite his tongue to stop himself from releasing the raunchiest swear words that he knew. What the hell is with this guy? Wolf growled, angrily kicking a rolling cart of supplies away from himself. The cart bumped and jumped its way down the hallway, before crashing into the wall at the end. How does he do it? He was in the closet. I saw him go in there. I'm not losing it, am I? No, Fox answered. We all saw him go in. It's bullshit, Falco shouted. How is he always one step ahead? How can that charming, beautiful man be so good at besting us? Falco, and the rest of the group, paused, as they each processed what the space ace had said. and for some flippin' reason I can't even cuss the cunning fox's name. Falco let loose. Completely defeated, he crumpled up against the wall. He held his hands against his head, and let out a low groan. Isabel, being the kind soul that she was quick to rush over to Falco's side and try to comfort him. Falco allowed it, surprisingly. Something tells me that this guy's got more power than he's letting off. Maybe more than we can even comprehend, Sonic mused, a finger moving up to rest on his chin. He's always so many steps ahead of us. He seems to know the ins and outs of this place better than any of us do. It's like he's slowly learning how to control reality itself. Isabel, hushed due to the absurdity of the claim, theorized. You're probably not too far off with that one, Isa, Wolf commented, rubbing at his chin. The Star Wolf leader was digging through the closet that Max had entered. He tapped his fist and his paws and boots against any surface he could, but did not find any exits. Instead, he got covered in red paint. It should be impossible to know the things that he knows, Fox muttered, shaking his head at the scene before him. He knows all of our names. He knows what we've done. But if he knows all that, what does he want with the myths? They are pretty forgettable, Falco commented. This landed him a glare from Fox. What? They're hardly here. They only show up when they're crucial to some evil villain's plot. What could a man with infinite knowledge want with a bunch of fighters that can be mass-produced? Sonic asked, puzzled. Maybe it's not all myths, Isabel suggested. He did seem to only have two with him. He held them up on that strong back of his. Those gallant muscles, Wolf added. Wasn't he just the most dapper thing you ever saw? Fox continued. A pause broke out between the group, before every single one of them let out a low, loud groan. I love that guy. Falco spat angrily. Wasn't it nice to have a fan base? The masked man had just put his money into the vending machine on the outside of the mess hall. Something about the cheesy snack on the inside spoke to him, and he had to have it. A case of the midday munchies was upon the Pikmin masked man, and he would do whatever it took to get rid of it. Slowly, the machine creaked to life, pushing the snack closer and closer. The masked man could almost taste it, it was so close. Suddenly, the snack stopped mere inches away from the drop zone. Puzzled, the masked man crouched down to the same level that the bag of cheesy crackers was on. Yeah, that was stuck, all right. Disgruntled, the hungry man reached for his wallet once again. He was determined to get those crunchy, cheesy crackers if it was the last thing he... The machine whirred back to life, catching the shine off guard. Tilting backwards, he ended up on his backside, as the cheesy goodies fell out of the machine and into the slot below. However, the treats didn't stop in the tray. Ramping out, the chips flew across the thin hallway, and out of sight. In a moment of shock and awe, the masked man watched for a moment, before his legs shot into action. In an instant, the masked man was up, and after the runaway crackers. Turning the corner that the bag seemed to escape from, the masked man looked desperately around for where they could be hiding. But instead heard a crunching sound. A pair of dress-shoed feet filled his eyes, as he drew closer. Slowly, the masked man's eyes rose up. Following up in the legs, then the torso, and finally, resting on the face. Happily, Max chomped away on the treats that had just come into his possession. Delighted, Max shot a wave to the man before him with a hand that encased his cane. Ah. Luke. Such a pleasure for you to join me today. Max mused, a slight talk to his voice. The masked man's eyes did not leave the bag of cheesy crackers. Slowly, Max gestured to it, swallowing the one he had in his mouth. How rude of me. Where are these yours? Luke nodded his head, making eye contact with the hero for the first time this story. Max, being the gentleman that he was, offered the bag back to its rightful owner. Hesitantly, the masked man reached forward to grab it, only for Max to pull it away. Not quite yet, though, my friend, Max hummed, holding the bag out of reach for a moment. Flicking his cane around, Max pointed the bald end at the man before him. That same, shit-eating grin was stretched over his brilliant lips. You can have these back when I become real. Just like the other two myths before him, the masked man was added to Max's collection. Just a few more before his plan could meet completion, whistling happily to himself, everyone's favorite hotel manager from Smash Vs 169 rounded the corner. Over one arm the unconscious body of the still masked man hung limply, defeated by the cunningness and finesse of Max. In the other hand, he held the very bag that had given him the opportunity to capture Luke. Cheesy goodness. Right, now, let's see. Max muttered, his cane coming to tap upon his chin. How many more of these incarnations are there? Kate, Luke, Alice. In his head, Max counted the number of Elder Gods that there had been at the time of the final reset. Then, he subtracted the years it had been, and divined the likeliness of a reincarnation. Then, it hit him. Willow, Max grumbled. He had had his fair share of disagreements with Willow in his time. It seemed as if the goddess of death and change didn't much care for Max's neat and tidy ways. And there was something that irked him about her boisterous personality. A small, sly grin spread over the well-dressed man's lips. Willow, Willow, Willow. Always did have a thing for taking too much without replacing it. Bah, maybe if it weren't for her, the elder gods might still be alive today. Or, well, as alive as they ever were. Max let out a soft chuckle to himself. It felt as if there was a powerful current running deep within his bones, coursing through his entire body. He felt like a god, as he tapped deeper and deeper into this multiverse's written origins. The literator felt as if he could control the aspect of the universe with nothing more than a simple snap of his fingers. Discarding the bag of crackers in a nearby waste bin, he was a gentleman. After all, Max continued off down his way with the Max-imum on his shoulder. He had some ghost busting to do. Something is wrong, Mark muttered, a hand moving up to swipe through his hair. No, no, no. Something is very, very wrong. We searched the entire hotel, and didn't find any signs of him. He reported, a hand moving to scratch at the backside of his head. The announcer gave us a clue as to where he was at, but when we went to look, all we found was a bunch of red paint on the floor. It's like he just up and disappeared. Mario mused, a gloved hand resting under his chin. None of us have seen this man since the day he's shown up, Paludna explained to the manager. From what I heard from Falco, he had some mis with him the last time he was spotted. What on earth could he want with a bunch of mis? Not just any bunch of mis, either. It's like he's going through and picking out a select few that he needs to complete the plan he's got in mind. Falco nodded, still disgruntled about being outsmarted earlier in the day. He had captured the pigtailed mu and the armored mu, but not Obama or Pee-Pee. Pee-Pee nodded upward, reinforcing Falco's point. Kate and Alice had seemed to disappear without a trace, all thanks to the fantastic, scholarly gentleman who now roamed the hallways. You mean Kate and Pee-Pee? Paludna asked. Falco, in turn, nodded his head. Kate. Alice. Mark mused, his hand continuing to comb through his hair. Something about those names sound familiar, but I just can't place why that is. They are pretty common names, Mario offered. Perhaps someone from your hometown had those names? No, no. No one from Morn's Point have those names, Mark shrugged. How about friends? Do any of your friends have names like those? He asked. I don't get out enough to have many friends, Mark deadpanned. I'm a loser and a slave to my job, so socializing is a little out of my league. Also, Max is way cooler than I'll ever be, anyway. Okay. It responded. That response sounded weird. What about your parents? Joker said, finally emerging from the shadow of the room he had been standing in. It made nearly everyone jump. Mark, however, was used to the shady teenager's antics. He didn't flinch whatsoever. Parents? Mark asked, his brows scrunched. What on earth kind of question was that for someone who was born of Kate, the goddess of peace and love? The voice was faint to his ear, but Mark could have sworn he heard it. Like an old light bulb placed into a lamp and forced on, a small string of memories hit him all at once regarding the elder god he had once long forgotten. His mind, in turn, put two and two together. Oh gods, Mark muttered, a panic sweeping over him as he realized what Max's true plan was. He's collecting the elder gods. He's a what? Mario asked, concerned and confused at the same time. It was too late, however. Mark had already pushed himself upwards from his office chair, and was assembling his Temple Lord armor. Flicking on a monitor overhead, he checked the location of the interdimensional I van. It was parked squarely in the garage. And that's where he's taking them, Mark muttered. Desperately, he turned to the ragtag cast before him with pleading in his eyes. We can't let him. Whatever he's planning on doing with that power, we can't let him do it. Of course not. It exclaimed. We'll take him down, Ren said. He's certainly up to no good. Paludna muttered, with a finger on her chin. I call the final blow. Falco exclaimed. Mark smiled. They had a chance. Max continued his quest down the hallway. With a skip in his step and a tingle in his spine, he knew he was getting closer to the reincarnation of death itself. Oh, what a joyous day it would be when she was no more. The fact that death existed without her was proof enough that she didn't need to exist in the first place. Something whizzed past Max's head, throwing his hair all out of alignment. With a scoff, the red-suited man of class scooped it back into his usual coif. before turning his eyes ceiling bound. There, above his head, hovered the ghostly apparition of what appeared to be a ghostly Max, as he had done with all the other reincarnations, flashed the purple specter a smile. There you are. My sweet, ever so humble Willow. Max mused, a sarcasm dripping out through his voice. He offered the ghost a bow, who watched carefully from afar. Something about this man gave off vibes Willow did not want to be associated with. What was that he held on his back? My, you're looking awful purple today. It's almost obnoxious. But isn't that what your whole thing was back when you had a physical body? Max asked, softly tilting his head. All of those birds. And the on-the-fly changes you would make. Obnoxiousness seemed to be your forte, right? Tentatively, Max made a step forward. The ghost above his head didn't say anything. In fact, the ghost had no idea what Max was even talking about to begin with. Birds? Changes? Looks like death finally got your goat, then, huh? And the universe wasn't even so kind as to give you another body like the rest of them. Maybe it, too, knows just how terrible of a goddess you truly were. Max smiled. Flicking his cane up, he spun it in his hand like it were a flag. Oh, that rumble in his bones was getting more and more intense by the moment. One too many resets. Thought that stupid temple could save the future you no longer have because of your own stupid mistakes. Even in reincarnation, I think the universe could use a little payback. That was a red flag. Milo, activating fight or flight, charged directly at the man who made the idle threats. But it didn't matter. A flash from Max's cane was all that was needed to stun her. Using a humble poltergust he had made off-screen from odds and ends made specifically to hold one ghost, Willow went down without too much of a fight. Max, however, enjoyed the scream she released as the vacuum reeled her in. Again, Max grinned. Thanks for all the support, Willow, Max said. Hopefully I live up to that likable villain trope you keep calling me. Maybe, just maybe, I'll meet you and chat on the other side of this screen. With the last of the reincarnations captured, Max was ready for the next stage of his plan. He willed it. I willed it, oh yes. It was all coming together. With the 4 known reincarnations captured and under his watchful eye, Max began setting phase 2 of his plan into action. He knew a lot of things, and the most important thing that he knew was that if he wished to become real, his only real shot was going through the Elder Gods. Carefully, he had picked through them as in the main story that had been alluded to in the spin-off story. He could sense a sort of dormant power deep within each of them. And, judging by their fear and general incompetence, they themselves didn't even realize this sort of power they held. If they weren't going to use it, I would graciously take the reins. All was coming to fruition. The Ivan held the key to Max's success. From his own home-verse, I hated the term. That joke of a universe would never be my real home. Max had brought with him a tool that could reawaken the idle powers that each reincarnation held within their bodies. Within their souls. With this power, he could drain them, and ascend to a realm beyond his own. A realm outside of the webpage that was archive of our own. He could be real. Max knew not if this method would actually work. He knew not if his idea to transcend realities and escape through the fourth wall would work, or if he could wield the powers that the Elder Gods possessed, but it was his only shot. I had one goal in mind, and I would do whatever it took to get there. Soon enough, the puny Elder God reincarnations began to reawaken. Leaning on his cane, Max watched the light of this false reality come back into the eyes of Alice. And then Luke. And finally Kate. Willow, still trapped in the vacuum backpack, banged violently against the sides but was unable to free herself. The other goddesses and god were treated to Max's smiling face. Hello and good morning, my lovelies. I grinned, offering a wide wave to the captured biz. You all played well, but unfortunately, there is no prize for last place. I win, and I will get what I want. As long as you all comply, none of you will be hurt any more than you currently are. There was a pause as I thought, before I added, probably. I've never attempted this if I'm being honest. When I get out of here, I'm going to rearrange your head with your ass. Alice shouted groggily, the effects of the cane still upon her. I rolled my eyes. Please. Last time I checked, you don't really have a reason to exist. You're only here because you commissioned your OC into this place. Luckily, we have a gracious author. Willow let out a low moan, thrashing against the inside of the backpack. Quiet, you two. I don't want another word from either of you. I exclaimed, allowing my anger to get the better of me for just a moment. You two caused a lot more trouble than it was worth for any of us. Really. It's pathetic how barbaric you two got. Quit boring us to death with your fancy talk, and tell us what you want. Alice snarked back. Disappointed, Max crushed the end of his cane painfully against Alice's shin, adding a spin for that extra bit of hurt. Alice, understandably, yelped out in pain. Kate cringed in fear, and Luke did just the same. The gods were crumbling at the feet of nothing more than a temple lord. How rich. Your incompetence led to the end of the golden era, you wretch, I explained as nicely as I could. In fact, I believe your entire job could have been done by the ghost in the backpack. If both of you weren't so greedy and worked something out, hey, I might not have to cheat and take by force what should have been mine to begin with. Max removed his cane from Alice's shin. For once in her life, the easily angered Miss said nothing, as Max sauntered over towards Luke. The masked Mitt tried to hide further into the cold floor of the garage and struggled slightly against his vines. Max clicked his tongue, forcing Luke to tilt his eyes upward towards his own. Concealed by unnecessary sunglasses, Max's own eyes were hidden away. Luke was shivering like a cold puppy, as Max began to speak. Luke, ever the pacifist, weren't you? Indecisive as always, you stayed out of the wars that led to the downfall. A smart move, really, if the fate of the entire multiverse wasn't riding on it. Maybe you and your many beasts could have done something if you hadn't taken the coward's way out, I hummed. Hooking my cane under the mask that hid his face, I swiftly and suavely flicked it off of his face. The face that was there was, in fact, the face of the kind and cowardly nature god. HMPH. Haven't changed a day, have you, Lukey? Don't know why you decided to start wearing masks, but hey. It suits you. Always afraid of his own shadow. I'll be sure to plant a tree in your honor once I'm out of here. Leaving the no longer masked in a state of panic due to his loss of mask, Max rounded towards the last goddess who hadn't been verbally ripped apart by him yet. Mother Kate, I addressed, a small grin curling the corners of my mouth. It certainly has been a long time, hasn't it? Even now. Just being in your presence helps soothe the pains of my curse of knowledge. Though, that alone won't keep me here with you. It's lesser. Something changed. Did the universe strip you of your power? Don't hurt them, Kate pleaded softly, her eyes meeting his. There were tears welling at the edges of her rimmed glasses. Please. If you must, hurt me, put them. Bold as always, Kate. But I don't plan on hurting you at all, I shrugged. I gestured towards Alice and Willow with my cane, my eyes locked onto Kate's own. These two deserve hurting beyond anything else. Why was Willow so marred when Alice lived scot-free? The multiverse is unfair like that, Kate. You're lucky I'm a little fairer myself. Max turned to open the doors of the I-van, before retrieving an instrument from the door. What are you planning? Kate asked, fear dripping from her voice. I shrugged, attaching bulbs onto Alice's forehead. She hadn't a clue what I was talking about, how could she? She was but a shell of her former self, but my talking to and cane seemed to have shut her up. A painless procedure, really. Just something to help me get what I want that'll leave you mostly unscathed. It's but a small price to pay for salvation, my dear. Luke squeaked as the cool metal was placed against his head. It didn't help his shivering, either. Seeing no way attach a bulb to a ghost, Max used the poltergust to suck it in. Willow let out a fearful wail, as the white thing dangled within with its power-sucking abilities. Kate, however. He was awfully gentle to Kate, making sure that the reincarnation of the mother goddess wasn't in any kind of discomfort. What happened wasn't your fault, Kate, Max reassured her, giving her cheek a small squeeze. You didn't do anything. You didn't have to send audio to destroy you all. Turning his back to Kate, he returned to the device that was at his fingertips. Taking control, he flicked it on. And, of course, was met with a loading screen. Cliché, I protested, rolling my eyes. But clichés make a story, don't they? Let me guess. Next is the part where the villains make a last stand against the handsome hero, right? If on cue, a voice rang out through the garage. Mark was here. Max. Mark shouted, his Temple Lord armor gleaming on his body. He was flanked by a small team of soldiers who were here to do the same job he was. Threatening with his sword, Mark approached his genetic duo. You will release them right now, Max, or I swear I'll kill you right here. I grinned. You seem to have forgotten. You all seem to have forgotten. I did it. By the minute, my smile was growing larger. Almost inhuman. Slowly, my feet rose from the ground, as I took to the air. Your reality is my playground. Final. Boss. Music. Time. 10%. Take him down. We've got him right where we want him. Mark's shouts echoed around the walls of the garage, as the Lord of Knowledge floated above him. Hair flickering in an unseen breeze, Max looked more like the Lord of Power than Knowledge. But the two did seem to run hand in hand. Quickly, Falco, Wolf, and Fox drew their blasters, firing wildly at the floating tuxedoed men. Their shots would not miss this time. They had a clear shot. But I had thought otherwise. You can't harm a man who has the power to shift your own reality. I dismissed promptly. With a swipe of my hand, I absorbed the projectiles from my way. Pressing my hands together, I returned fire with larger blasts of those same projectiles. Surprised, the space pilot stuck to avoid them. Please, leave at once. I don't wish to hurt any of you, but won't hesitate to do so if you get in my way. Isabel, diving forward, pocketed the projectile before throwing it right back at the other before her. A game of deathly tennis was played out between them. I question your motives. What is so important that you put those around you under for your own sake? Bold words, I retorted. Once more, I absorbed the projectile that was lobbed back at me, but kept it in. Though, for someone who doesn't pay the proper taxes she should for her towel, you seem awfully keen to help others. What? Isabel asked, taken aback. The moment of hesitance was all that was needed for the Lord to pull the rug out from under her. Literally. Swiping his hand down low, Isabel's feet were swept right off the ground. Painfully, she landed several feet away, crumpled and whining. Isabel! Wolf shouted, rushing quickly to the side of his beloved to make sure she was okay. Taking a knee beside her, Wolf checked her over to make sure nothing was broken or bleeding. Isabel, are you alright? Why yeah, she mumbled, before reaching up to her head. That hurt. Where? Were those stars always there? Below. Isn't it hard for you? I asked sarcastically. 25%. You're vile, Joker spat, his voice leaking with deceit. Mark told me about you, but I never expected this. And you've got parental issues, what's new? I asked with a shrug. Call me what you will, but the way I see it, I'm nothing more than a man in a very specific mission, and you are an obstacle the writer throws at me to get more kudos. Greedy bastard. Isn't first place enough? I have no idea what that means. A voice suddenly exclaimed. The booming baritone was none other than Douglas J. Falcon himself. The racer had seen his better days since their first run-in but was ready to roll again. Flanking him was Shulk, followed by Rob. Right. Another cliché. In their darkest moment, the film I started, but was rudely interrupted. Super Mario jumped at me from behind, a fistful of flaming hot fire careening towards the backside of my head. However, I saw it coming. Sticking a hand backward, I caught the plumber by the hem of his overalls. Rude. I was having a moment there with these fine folks. Mario. Sonic exclaimed. The hedgehog prepared to dash at the Lord, but was shut out as Mario's body came pelting towards him at blinding speeds. The two heroes lay in a hurt mess. Do you really think you can beat me by coming at me one at a time? I scolded. The idea never seemed to have occurred to them. Light bulbs seemed to spring from each of their heads. Great idea. It exclaimed, wings fluttering outward. Palutena had already granted him the gift of flight, and Pit took to the skies. Everyone. All at once. Joker and Mark drew their blades, ready to strike at the beam before them. Palutena grabbed her staff. Shulk held the Monado close, while Falcon charged his fiery energy. Max simply grinned at them. 50%. Why don't we make this a little more interesting? What do you say? I proposed, that same stunning smile I was so well known for spanning my face. As the lights began to dim in the garage, my smile was entirely still visible against the inky blackness. After a moment, it, too, was gone. Where is he? Isabel asked, alarmed. In her stunned state, a panic was beginning to settle over her. Frantically, she looked about. But any sign of him anywhere around? Who needs a cannon when you're in control? I laughed wildly. I am everywhere, and nowhere at all. I can do whatever I want when I'm the one holding the steering wheel. Last chance. Leave now, or I'll be forced to do things I won't be proud of. Captain Falcon drew his gun, which had a flashlight attached to it. The light pierced the darkness. But Max was nowhere to be seen. It appeared as if the handsome devil had disappeared. The miss, Mark commanded. We can give the miss while he's doing whatever he's doing. As quickly as they could, the remaining members of the party charged forward in an attempt to free the incarnations from whatever binding Max had put them in. But I couldn't make it that easy on them. With one fell swoop, the earth itself belched upwards to create an impenetrable wall of concrete out of the floor below. If one had been standing atop it, it would have crushed them. Instantly, Rob tried drilling a hole through the middle, but found the stone impossible to break. It seems that I missed an incarnation, a voice spoke. CAD. Oh.
How long it has been since I've heard that robotic voice. Too bad you serve no purpose to me. You're and now in the shell of a body. This poor, old thing has no use to me.
Rob was tossed back from the concrete. With a surprised sound, the robot went sprawling, clinking and turning as if he was nothing more than a penny cast aside by an angry child. He's just about as good at making friends as you were, CAD, the voice of Max hummed.
Falcon's about as stupid as they come. Falcon Punch isn't going to help this meathead out today.
Show yourself, coward. Falco shouted angrily. I'm going to blow this smug look right off your stupid face.
If you say so,
I hummed, materializing suddenly in front of Falco. Swishing one foot under the bird, I knocked him off balance, and he was sent tumbling downward. His wind was knocked out as a swift kick found the side of his body, sending him sprawling sideways. There he is. Now's the time to... What? It shouted, cut off. A strong hand had grasped the backside of his leg as he flew about the crowded garage. Spun around in a circle, it was used to batter against the bodies of other advancing opponents and then thrown directly into the goddess he had sworn to protect. Painfully, it collapsed on top of Paluna, making it impossible for either to do any other real damage. And right on his bad wing, too. I know your next move, Shulk proclaimed. And you'll never see me coming, Joker added, both gun and knife exposed and ready to go.
You say that.
But something tells me both claims are false, I said. Coming behind Shulk, I tapped the Minato wielder on the shoulder. Panicking, he spun quickly with the blade. The blue glowed brightly against the darkness of the room. But in the quick turning, he smacked Joker right upside the head. Luckily, the blue blade missed Joker's neck by mere inches, instead whacking him with the red metal. With a groan, Joker crumbled, holding his head. Sorry. Shulk quickly apologized, dropping his guard for only a moment. That moment was all that Max needed to cease Shulk's resistance. In an instant, Shulk was hit in the stomach, and then right in the back of the head. Just like the Persona user before him. The block, too, was out for the count. 75%.
Is that all the resistance you puny smashers could put up?
I asked, allowing the lights to come up once more. All around me were the crumpled bodies of those what's the matter? Things getting a little too twisted for you? You're a monster. Fox shouted, at the sight of Falco. His comrade let out a low groan, as Fox did his best to assist him.
Shut your trap, animal.
I've heard it all before, I amused, clamping my hand. Fox, in turn, was shut up. He tried to further his argument but found it completely impossible.
Anyone else want to try me?
I asked, my arms outstretching. I haven't even broken a sweat. But it looks like you all have a few broken bones. You and I have unfinished business, partner. Turning his head, the Lord of Knowledge met the eyes of the Reset Lord. The cool grays of Mark's eyes met those of Max's unnecessary, obnoxious sunglasses. I grinned once again.
Mark.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Max asked, with a tilt of his head. How are the kids? Nora? Don't bring them into this, Mark commanded, taking a stance. His sword sheened with light against the light of the room. Someone's a little touchy, I commented, a finger resting beside my cheek. You even brought out the armor. I'm surprised this still fits. You used to be much thinner. Is that what you do? Take refuge in insulting people? Mark asked.
You're hardly people. To me, it's as if I'm arguing with extremely dumb computers, I retorted.
In fact, I believe I'm the only one talking here. Reading you speak is something else. I tell you, what does your voice even sound like? 90%. What do you know about me? Mark asked suddenly. He could play this game, too. Make Max talk and strike when he least expected it. Mark grit his teeth. My, do I have his dollar on my hands, wishing to know what the Lord of Knowledge knows, but he could never attain? I asked, intrigued. It was bait. Obvious bait. But there was another cliché that needed to be met. I think this whole hotel business isn't for me, Mark expressed. What do you know that'll help me grow? What the hell are you doing? Wolf shouted. Lay him out already. Much like Fox before him, Wolf was silenced with nothing more than the clamping of Max's fingertips. Wolf's language, however, grew extremely colorful under the guise of his muffled muzzle. Mr. Marcus Mark Kleinberg. A quaint name for a temple lord, don't you think? I hummed idly, using his newfound powers of floating to hover in the air. The world was my rocking chair, and I was a helpful grandfather helping his brain-dead grandchild see the world from a new perspective. You and I. What happened, Marcus? You always were Father Audio's favorite. Audio? Mark asked. The god of creation and life had left his memories long ago. But just hearing it spoken again in this context was something new entirely. You and I.
Yes, Mark. You and I were made by the same God for different purposes. And it was he and Kate who decided to make the final call to end it all due to the squabblings of the others. Truly heroic, wasn't he?
95%. Where is he now? Mark asked, a sneaking feeling running up his body. 96%. I think you know that already, friend, I responded.
Unlike the other gods.
97%, he's somewhere else. 98%, somewhere I want to go. Somewhere I will go. 99%. Mark thrust his blade forward. Max, caught up in his own talking, was caught off guard, even though he swore that he wouldn't be. Mark, too, seemed to have some unpredictability about him. With a loud groan, Max's hovering stopped, and he landed on his feet. Digging his blade in deeper, Max was subject to more pain. Real pain. Legitimate pain. Pain he'd never once felt in his life up until this point. His head hung low, and his teeth grit. You'll do no such thing, Mark told him. You couldn't stay true to your word, and betrayed him. What do you think he'd want with you? I won't let you get away with this. Even as he stared death right in the face, Max smiled. Mark. What? Max rose his eyes up to the other. His sunglasses had fallen off to the wayside, so the cool gray of his own eyes were clearly visible. Pointing to the machine the incarnations were hooked up to, a number was clearly visible. 100%, I already have gotten away with it. Taking out a switch from his coat pocket, which now dripped blood the same color as his suit, Max pressed it. Mark and the others screamed out, as the power of the elder gods was pumped into him. I laughed maniacally. I was going to be real. I was going to feel. I was going to be in control of my own actions, instead of audio. And then, everything went white. The white light began to fade out, as the natural light of the Smashverse came into view. Mark, Shulk, and the rest of those who had put up a final stand began to rub at their eyes, putting the temporary blindness behind them. So. He's gone now. Sonic muttered, stating what everyone had been thinking, at least we got what we wanted. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Joker muttered. It should have worked. 50 feet from where he had been stabbed, Max sat, hunched on his hands and knees, staring off at nothing. He seemed to have had no damage whatsoever to his person. The stab wound Mark had gifted him seemed all but healed. Was he crying? I don't understand. Max muttered quietly. It was true. There were genuine, anguished tears running down his pathetic face. His cane sat but inches from him. In his complete devastation, the tuxedoed man balled his hands into fists, slamming them painfully against the concrete floor of the garage. Damn it, why? Why did nothing happen? Why am I still subject to this demented puppet master? I just want to exist. I want to be real. Unable to form cohesive thought anymore, Max crumpled to the ground, defeated. While the Elder Gods did have links to the real world, their power, too, was fictional. No amount of probing powers could help him escape the terrible situation he was in. He was fiction, and would forever remain fiction. Carefully, a small squadron moved to approach the weeping man. The concrete had been lowered as Max's power peaked and then suddenly left. The incarnations were no longer subject to their binds. Do we shoot him? Falco asked. The show's over, Max, Mark stated, coming upon the man before him. He'd never seen Max look so pathetic, powerless. The suave bastard was devastated by the fact that his plan had failed to yield the results he so desired. Max suddenly remembered he was surrounded by other fictional characters. Ones who most likely were not happy to have him here. Instead of a defensive standpoint, however, Max turned towards them. His face streaked with the tears of a man who had been to his limit and came crashing back down. He had no more fight left in him. And no more hope for his own salvation. Kill me, Mark, Max whispered. There was a gentle pleading in his voice, which was unmoved by his sobbing. End my existence. I've wronged you and I know just how pointless my life is here anyway. End me. End me. End me, damn it. The desperation in Max's voice reached out to Mark, and sent a chill down his spine. He looked into the face of his defeated other. And it was like looking into a mirror. Mark removed his sword from its spot on Max's chest, much to the other's dismay. Max, I can't, in good conscience, do that, Mark told him. Please, Mark. Please. I can't bear it any longer. This curse I've had for years. I kept with it knowing that there might be a chance down the road that could free me from this text prison, and yet, there's nothing. With a shaky hand, Max reached for his cane, offering it to the party before him. Take this, and snap it. Right in two. If you do that, my mind will melt, and I'll be out of your hair forever. Falco made a move to reach for the staff, but was promptly stopped by Fox, who shook his head. None of the other smashers made any move to take the cane. Mr. Max. If you don't mind me asking, why don't you want to live here anyway? Isabel asked, with a tilt to her head. She was still injured, sure, but using Wolf as a support, she could stand firmly. You wouldn't be able to comprehend the beginnings of my problems, Max dismissed, his voice dripping with sadness. His life was a wreck, if you could even call the damnation that he was in a life. My life is pointless, and I have no control over my own life. I'm unaffected by the passage of time when I wish for nothing more than the release that death can provide me with. Life isn't worth it if I can't be my own man, and not some stupid puppet on a stick, dancing to amuse those stupid enough to click on this work of artistry. Max grew silent again, bent double with the agonizing pain in his chest. There truly was no escape. He'd done everything right, and still come out on bottom. His struggles were nothing more than entertainment for those reading his life story. A beat paused, before Sonic spoke up. You might think it's not worth living, Max. But you've got to remember that this is the only life you've got, Sonic consoled, resting a gloved hand against the other's shoulder blade. Max flinched, as if he was expecting to be hurt, but didn't push the hedgehog away. The hedgehog is right, Pit said softly, you don't have a goddess to bring you back once it's all over with. Or a one-up mushroom. Mario added. You all don't know what I know, and you can't even begin to comprehend it. Max suddenly shouted, angrily. I can't live with this kind of knowledge. That might be so. But we'd be willing to try, Mark told his counterpart. Gently, he crouched down to one knee, so that he was eye level with the other. You don't have to die, Max. You can choose to live. The words struck a chord with the other. Even though the tears still stung his cheeks, he felt something in him move. What was that feeling? He'd not had feeling in him since the day he learned he was nothing more than words on a page. How can I choose if I haven't a free will? He asked, softly. I've tried to control my life. I tried to dictate the flow of the story. I tried to control all of you. You might need to learn how to just go with it, Palutena suggested. Perhaps let go of the control. Let the world take you wherever it wants to take you. Max said nothing, as these words were spoken to him. Softly and slowly, he lowered his cane to his side, gripping it tightly. This was not the reaction he expected to get from these people. What was this kindness? A hug. Max was suddenly aware of a hug that was placed around his middle section. Turning to his left, he saw none other than an incarnation that he had just tried to manipulate into giving him access to the real world. Kate hugged him tightly. Then, Luke did the same. Soon enough, it was a hugging pile all around the red-suited man who had seen the end and walked back from it. For a moment, the man who was hyper-aware of everything was just a man. But only a moment. I can't accept this, Max muttered, shuffling away from the others. It's just an emotional tug. Something to get me to want to stay. I can't accept this. With that, Max took his cane and bolted for the door of the garage. Somehow, by these inhuman beings, he felt less empty. He didn't know if he liked it. The others watched him race away, apparently disgusted by their display of affection. It took a moment before someone finally spoke up. So, that day happened. Mario muttered softly, running at the backside of his head. Who wants to go and play some Super Mario Kart? The prospect was met with unanimous acclaim. The smashers all excitedly exited. All except for a goddess and a hotel manager. So, Mark. Palutena started. I know what you're going to ask. No, I don't know anything about the elder gods of the multiverse. And yes, I think Max will be alright. Palutena was surprised. How did you know what I was going to ask? You are Mark, right? Not Max? Mark offered her a smile that was close to Max's own. What can I say? My brother and I have some things in common, I guess. The two laughed it off, before also leaving the garage. Mark's thoughts shifted to Max for a moment. Hopefully, wherever that bastard had run off to was a good place. Footsteps echoed through the forest, as a man pushed to his limit and from another realm traveled a path he'd retraced again and again in his mind over many eons. It was a path he dreamed of since the day they had gone. A path that he traveled well back in his day. The only path that felt like home to him. As Max plunged deeper and deeper into the massive forest that surrounded the hotel, he imagined the place of refuge in his mind. The beautiful garden that helped him on those days where everything seemed impossible to deal with. The days where his curse seemed too heavy to handle were the days the elder gods permitted him to visit the place that helped him find peace within. Here, the goddess of love and peace would ease his tensions and assure him that everything would be alright. He was a fool for believing her then, and he was a fool for returning there now. One could wander the forest endlessly without coming across the garden. Protected by a magical enchantment, only those with the right intentions could dream of coming to the peaceful place. Max, in his turbulent state, was in that mindset. He genuinely longed for peace. Peace he could never find knowing what he did. Deeper and deeper he went. At this point, he was unsure if he could ever find his way back if he so chose to. Not that he ever would. Neither hotel ever felt like home to him. The only place he had ever felt at home in his entire existence was beginning to come into his vision. A soft, silver white light shone through the darkness of the trees around him, and Max could have sworn he felt his heart skip a beat. The garden was right ahead. Picking up the pace, Max hurriedly rushes ahead, wishing to finally come to peace once again. As he returned to the garden, however, things were not how he remembered them. As if lost to time, which it truly was, the once neat and orderly garden was overgrown. The plants that grew here seemed to take over everything. Flowers were competing with weeds and other brush. The walkways were filled with cracks and holes, and twigs littered the ground. Even the sun seemed less warm here than it once had. Max took a moment to inspect it all. For a moment, he scanned the brush and the flowers, reminding himself of how it had looked all those years ago, when the goddess of peace tended to it with every fiber of her being. Someone seems to be slacking. Max commented, to no one in particular. He ran a finger along the petal of a lilac, feeling the smooth texture of the flower. What was that music he heard? He looked about, but found nothing. The nothingness seemed to resonate deep within his soul. As his eyes scanned, they met a bench. And a new wave of memories hit him. Long repressed, the memories came flooding back to Maxwell as fast as a river ran downhill. He remembered the day they met. The way she would take the edge off of his existence. The way his heart would jump at the melodical tone of her voice. The thoughts were so powerful that they brought him to his knees. Harmony. Where had Kate's own little gardener gone? Harmony was, by no stretch of the imagination, a regular lord. No, she was hardly a lord at all. If anything, she was a glorified housekeeper who kept the garden on tip-top shape when the goddess herself was not around to keep the place up and operational. And took the role of support whenever the goddess of love and peace was out. Many a day did Max spend in the presence of Harmony. At his peak, Max would come to the garden via transport once a week. The place itself seemed to do wonders to keep him grounded to this reality. And Harmony's gentle, healing touch did just the same. Hesitantly, slowly, methodically, Max approached the bench where they had first met. Slowly, he reached forward, laying a hand on the wood that, too, was overgrown with moss and weeds. He exhaled lightly, hanging his head as he remembered. "You strike me as a Maxwell." His eyes jolted upward. The voice felt as if it had come from right beside him, but as he looked about, he saw no one other than himself there. "H. Harmony?" Max whispered out. There was no response. She must have abandoned her post. Just as Mark and myself had, Max tried to convince himself. But his arguments fell flat, even to himself. Max had known Harmony. He'd spent years of his life with her. She'd brought peace to him on days that he was convinced there was no peace to be had in this fictional realm. He knew her. And he knew she would never abandon her post and leave the beautiful garden in this state of ruin. Harmony was many things, and many things to him. One of those things was a passionate and hard worker. Kate's garden gave her a sense of purpose, and she seemed to genuinely enjoy her job gardening. The state the garden was in right now would make her sick to her stomach. Shakily, Max took a seat on the overgrown bench. Being the Lord of Knowledge, he knew many things. Some pleasant. Others, not so pleasant. One thing he didn't know, however, was what had happened to Harmony over all these eons. Or was he just lying to himself? Abandon her post, Max tried to convince himself. Just like me and Mark. With a heavy heart and a heavy mind, Max presses his back against the bench where they had first met all those years ago. He closed his eyes, and took a deep breath inward. He was lost. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Hopefully, Kate's garden of peace could help him find himself. There was a rustle in the trees. A gentle breeze blew against Max's cheeks, but he didn't move. The warm wind reminded him that he was here. And that he was going to be alright. A familiar scent arose from it. and he swore he felt something, or someone, clasp his hand. Once again, Max opened his eyes. The wind stopped. The feeling of someone grabbing his hand was gone. And at his feet, grew a singular, enchanted rose.